morning, Canada. Welcome back to another episode of Question Period. Today is December 2nd. Where is the time going? Holy smokes, totes my goats. So, as we all know, Pierre Poilievre last week threatened. He dropped the final warning because Jagmeet Singh consider themselves the man, the fighting man's man, the man of the people, the voice of the people, whatever the hell Jagmeet actually considers himself. He voted in favor, Jagmeet voted in favor of the Liberals' GST tax break. For the next 60 days, Canadians get zero GST tax. Huh? Wow, look at that. We might even get 250 smackaroos. So since he's in favor of cutting taxes, or one could say axing taxes, Pierre Poilievre says, all right, bet, prove it. So this week, could be today, could be tomorrow, could be the day after tomorrow, could be the day after tomorrow's tomorrow, could be the day after tomorrow's tomorrow. We are going to get a vote of non-confidence motion. And the tides are kind of turning because the Bloc, for the first time and ever, really, they're going to be voting in favor with the Conservatives, with Pierre Poilievre. So we actually have a little bit of a chance, at least more than we did with the two previous votes of non-confidence that took place earlier this year, I guess, since they resumed from the summer break. Holy crap, we could actually see something crazy happen, because keep in mind, there are rebel liberals and there are some NDPs that are a little bit cuckoo, which is why they're NDP to begin with. And then there's also quite a few more independents, like Pablo Rodriguez, who said, I don't want to be affiliated with Trudeau, so he went independent. And you got Randy. Which Randy? I don't know. The one who's at the center of the Indigenous the Indigenous business, right? He runs that Indigenous company, that Randy. There's a whole lot of stuff that's going to be happening. I'm not saying that we're going to see an election. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is we are going to see another vote of non-confidence, and who knows what that outcome is going to be. Keep in mind that Jagmeet Singh is also waiting for his pension in February. So there's a high likelihood that he's convinced, either through threatening his cabinet or, making sure everybody votes with him, which would be against the vote of non-confidence, so him and other NDP MPs can get their pension. We don't really know what's going on backdoor, all these things. We have no idea. But nonetheless, this is an exciting week. And of course, my fingers are going to be crossed, because I would love to see, just like you would love to see, an early election, which is why we watch this stuff, for the hopes and the dreams. So before we get into the video, because they are on the House floor right now doing some privilege statements, I want to encourage you all to smash the like button and subscribe to this channel. And turn that little bell notification on, that little tiny little bell, so you can actually be notified of upcoming not only videos, but these live streams. These live streams are very, very key to knowing what goes on in Parliament, in the House of Commons. And without further ado, let's just get right into the goodies. Here we go.
Conservative Party and foreign interference, and we still get the leader of the Conservative Party saying, no, I don't want to get the security clearance. Can the member clearly indicate to the people of Brampton, to all Canadians, why it is that the leader of the Conservative Party is the only leader in the House of Commons that continues to thumb his nose at Canadians and not get the security clearance?
Great question.
The honourable member for Dufferin-Caledon.
He's also the only one that can talk freely about it.
Of order somewhere, the honourable member for Central Okanagan, Similkameen Nicola. Is it?
Madam Speaker, you've ruled on the case of relevance a number of times today. The parliamentary secretary continues to talk about anything but the privilege motion, and I believe he's being disrespectful to the chair. I'd ask you to rule accordingly.
Their point of order, the honourable parliamentary secretary.
Yes, Madam Speaker, the member might be sensitive to the issue. I am being completely irrelevant. The reason why we're having the debate today is to have information transferred over to the Procedures and House Affairs Committee. The leader of the Conservative Party, I believe, is being borderline in contempt of Parliament by forcing members of the Conservative Party to speak up, talking about the character of the leader of the Conservative Party, and that's what my question was about. We have had numerous, literally hundreds of questions related to this. The member is wrong to try to limit my freedom of speech inside the House by not allowing me to talk about an issue that Canadians are concerned about.
As I've indicated before, the relevance should be linked to it. The honourable member did put the relevance at the beginning of his question, although the question at the end was a little bit not relevant, but I just want to say he did have some relevancy within that question. The honourable member for Dufferin-Caledon.
You know, Madam Speaker, in law school we learned a maxim. When you have the facts on your side, argue the facts. When you have the law on your side, argue the law. When you have neither the facts nor the law on your side, raise your voice and bang your desk. And that's exactly what we just got from NDP Liberal member. Now, let's talk about a couple things. If they want to improve national security, they can release the names. That's what we've been calling for. Just like they could release the documents. Do you see the pattern there? They want to claim all these kinds of privileges while they hide information that they claim is not necessary. So, the Prime Minister has allegedly had access to all this information, hasn't done a single thing to protect anyone in this country from a single scintilla of foreign interference. But somehow this so-called security briefing, which is mostly a muzzling order, would change things. It's not. The way they can do it is, let's have sunlight. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. Release the names of the people alleged to be involved in foreign interference and release the documents. Let's have some transparency. Oh, wait a minute. They ran on being an open and transparent government 9 years ago. Wow.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for Barrie Springwater, Oro-Medonte.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And thank you to the member from Dufferin-Caledon for his great words this morning. Madam Speaker, we're hearing more and more about this scandal. We've been talking about it now for months. How much money's gone missing, how many ethics charges are out there. It's just getting unbelievable. But now hearing more, even this morning from the Auditor General's report, things are just growing more and more. My only concern is that there's so many scandals, so many issues out there. People are losing track.
Yeah.
But, Madam Speaker, my colleague opposite did, from Dufferin-Caledon, mentioned about some of the whistleblowers' testimony. One of the ones maybe he didn't mention, I'd just like to rephrase it if I could and get his comments on that. This was directly from the SDTC whistleblower, and I quote, "I think that the current government is more interested in protecting themselves and protecting the situation being a public nightmare. And they would rather protect wrongdoers and financial mismanagement than have to deal with a situation like this SDTC and the public sphere." Maybe he has some comments on that and why these documents aren't being produced.
The honourable member for Dufferin-Caledon.
It's nice to have a relevant question, not questions from the government trying to dismiss this and distract. So, look, this is 100% true. We have to go back to what I said in my speech. Why these whistleblowers make great points. So then you have to ask yourself, why the cover-up? Why are they covering up these documents? Why are they hiding these documents? They're hiding the documents because they know how damning they will be, not just for their government, but for the ministers involved. It's the only reason. So with the terrible mismanagement of this program, either the minister involved was incompetent and therefore should be fired, or the minister was involved in the corruption, which is why they're trying to hide it. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Resuming debate, the honourable member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Madam Speaker, I rise to speak on the massive scandal at Sustainable Development Technology Canada, more appropriately known as the billion-dollar Liberal Green Slush Fund. This is a scandal involving 400 million taxpayer dollars that improperly went out the door, according to the Auditor General. 330 million of that involved conflicts of interest involving board members, 186 conflicts of interest, and multiple violations of the law, violations of the SDTC Act. And in the face of such a scandal, Canadians can rightly ask how it is that board members who were Liberal insiders engaged in conflicts of interest and funneled tens of millions of dollars into companies that they had interests in and got away with it for so long. Well, very simply, Madam Speaker, how this happened and why they got away with it for so long is because after 9 years of this Prime Minister, we have a government in which there is a culture of rot and corruption, a culture of rot and corruption that goes right to the top, right to the Prime Minister. This is a Prime Minister who fired his Attorney General Jody Wilson-Raybould when she defied his unethical and unlawful orders to interfere in the prosecution of SNC Lavalin. This is a Prime Minister who has hid behind Cabinet confidence to obstruct an RCMP criminal investigation into his potential wrongdoing. This is a Prime Minister who has the distinction of being the first Prime Minister in Canadian history to be found guilty of violating the Conflict of Interest Act, not once, but twice. And given that, it reflects what we have seen at SDTC, and it also perhaps explains why it is that as we speak, there are sitting members of the Cabinet who, like the Prime Minister, have been found guilty of violating the Conflict of Interest Act, including the Minister of International Trade and the Minister of Public Safety. And I would also mention the Liberal member for Hull Elmer, who was found guilty of breaking the Conflict of Interest Act while he served as Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister. And then there is the Liberal member for Edmonton Centre, who 2 weeks ago resigned from Cabinet in disgrace. This is someone who got caught violating the Conflict of Interest Act when he was involved in the operations of a shady PPE company in direct violation of the Act while he sat in Cabinet. More than that, the member for Edmonton Centre's company has been ordered by Alberta courts to pay back clients nearly $8 million for ripping them off. It faces 7 lawsuits alleging fraud, and the Edmonton police have opened a criminal investigation into the member's company. So, Madam Speaker, all of this is to say is that there is a culture of rot, corruption, and conflict from top to bottom in this government, and it has been happening from practically day one when this Prime Minister took office. And consistent with that rotten culture, it comes as no surprise that former Liberal Minister Navdeep Bains, when he was the Industry Minister, appointed a conflicted chair to the chair as that of SDTC. Annette Verscheren was someone who no doubt had a fair amount of business experience, but she had, as I alluded to, a major problem. She had a conflict of interest insofar as her company was receiving $2.2 million from SDTC. That is a blatant conflict of interest, and it ought to have immediately disqualified her from that role. But Navdeep Bains, being in the cabinet of a corrupt and conflicted government, said conflicts be damned, and he appointed Annette Verscheren as chair. And it was from that time onward, that we saw the self-dealing, the conflicts, and the mismanagement that were identified in the Auditor General's report. Almost all of it occurred under the time that Annette Verscheren served as chair, someone who was hand-picked by Navdeep Bains. Now, at or around the time that Verscheren was appointed by Bains to serve as chair, the SDTC board adopted a conflict of interest policy that encouraged corruption. This is a policy, just to give this House, through you, Madam Speaker, an illustration of what was contained in this policy. The conflict of interest policy permitted directors to buy and sell securities within companies funded by SDTC within 3 days of a public announcement. And so, to illustrate this policy in action, a board member could sit in and vote to fund a company on Monday, and it be the project funding being announced Monday. The same director could go and buy and sell securities in that company on Thursday.
Oh, wow.
It's akin to insider trading. And at the Public Accounts Committee, the Liberal member for Beaches East York took great exception when I characterized it as that. But I would remind the member through you, Madam Chair, that it is completely at odds with the rules of the Ontario Securities Commission for publicly traded companies, rules relating specifically to insider trading and self-dealing. No wonder, because, as I said, Madam Speaker, it's akin to insider trading. Pursuant to the rules of the Ontario Securities Commission, publicly traded companies, directors of those companies, can only buy and sell shares on a limited basis outside of the quarterly financial reporting periods. But here you had a policy that basically allowed members to get rich with insider information. Total corruption. If the member for Beaches East York wants to dispute that it's insider trading, it certainly is corruption. And, Madam Speaker, not only did the policy give a green light to essentially insider trading, it also violated the standards provided for in the Conflict of Interest Act. Now, why is that a problem? Well, among the problems with that is that 7 of the 14 board members were appointed by Cabinet. They were GIC appointments and therefore bound by the Conflict of Interest Act, and yet you had a policy at SDTC that violated the Conflict of Interest Act and also violated the SDTC Act, specifically Section 12.2, no director shall profit or gain any income or acquire any property from the foundation or its activities. And yet, Madam Speaker, that is precisely what happened again and again and again at SDTC. The Auditor General found that 5 out of 15 board members, so a third of the board, had interests in companies that were being funded by SDTC while they sat on the board in blatant conflicts of interest and in blatant violation of the SDTC Act. One such example involves the chair herself, Ms. Verscheren. She voted to funnel, and not only voted, but actually moved 2 motions to funnel $38.5 million into SDTC companies under the guise of being so-called COVID relief payments, payments that the Auditor General determined to be improper and outside of the scope of the contribution agreements with the Department of Industry. So $38.5 million of mismanagement, pretty bad, but even worse, arguably, is that $220,000 of that went into her own company, Enerstore. And as I noted, Ms. Verscheren is a woman with vast business experience and vast experience sitting on corporate boards. It shouldn't take someone with that experience. It frankly is a matter of common sense to know that it is completely unethical and a conflict of interest to sit on a board and move a motion to funnel money into one's company.
Yeah,
not only is
huge.
it a conflict of interest, I would
It's
say there's
illegal.
another word for it. It's called stealing. Stealing taxpayers' money, and Ms. Verscheren was found guilty by the Ethics Commissioner for that blatant conflict. And, Madam Speaker, then there's Andre-Lise Matteau. She is a close associate of the radical Environment Minister. Ms. Matteau came to the Public Accounts Committee and admitted that SDTC funneled $10.4 million into companies that she had interest in. Now, she said I identified that I had a conflict and that I left the room. But of course, Madam Speaker, that isn't good enough. I mean, think about it. It's not good enough in the context of a board member saying, I have a conflict, therefore I'm going to leave the room, and the board votes to funnel $10.4 million into my companies, and then I come back and another board member leaves the room and the board votes to funnel money into that member's companies. And that occurred again and again, 186 times. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I mean, it speaks to a culture of total corruption. So yes, she can argue I technically recused myself, but come on. And Madam Speaker, it's further not good enough because it violates the SDTC Act. Not profiting, not gaining, not acquiring property. That is strictly prohibited, but there was Mateau cashing in $10.4 million in unlawful payments approved by the board. And when I put it to her at committee that she had blatantly violated the SDTC Act, she had no answer. It was almost as if she was taken aback, speaking to the degree to which there was a culture of conflict and entitlement that permeated the SDTC board for so many years under former Liberal Minister Baines's watch and the current minister's watch. And the ministers say, well, they didn't really know anything about it, that SDTC is an arm's length foundation. Well, Madam Speaker, that is hardly an excuse. We're talking about $1 billion taxpayer dollars, $1 billion taxpayer dollars, and you have a former minister, Madam Speaker, and a current minister who basically try to wash their hands clean and say, forget about the $400 million, forget about the $330 million involving conflicts of board members, forget 186 conflicts of interest. It wasn't my responsibility. Madam Speaker, the Auditor General's report is an indictment of the lack of oversight provided under the two ministers, Baines and the current minister. And it's an absolute indictment, the report, but it's worse than that because there was someone who, according to the Deputy Minister, was the department's eyes and ears at every one of these Green Slush Fund board meetings. The Assistant Deputy Minister, Andrew Noseworthy, he sat there.
The assistant to the assistant.
As there were 186 conflicts of interest, as tens of millions of dollars were funneled into the companies of board members. And he appeared before the Public Accounts Committee last Thursday. And he claimed, or his excuse was that he had no independent way of verifying conflicts of interest. No independent way. Sitting there, 186 conflicts of interest, but he had no way to determine that there were conflicts of interest. And I said to him, well, sir, that is impossible. That can't be true because there was plenty of evidence before committee that the practice at SDTC was for an agenda to be sent out weeks before the meeting, in which board members were then invited to identify those projects in which they had conflicts of interest or proposed.
He hasn't looked at a piece of paper once.
At the beginning of each meeting, that the secretary would then read out those members who had identified conflicts of interest while Noseworthy was sitting there. So I said, that simply can't be true. So Noseworthy said, after he got caught misleading committee, to come up with the response that it wasn't his fiduciary duty to report on these conflicts and corruption. It wasn't his fiduciary duty. It speaks not only to a culture of wrought conflict and corruption that goes right to the top of SDTC's leadership with Ms. Verscheren, right to the top with members of this cabinet and the Prime Minister, but it also speaks to a complete level of contempt for taxpayers' money by this government. And, Madam Speaker, I have to say I'm just flabbergasted by that testimony, but perhaps I shouldn't be flabbergasted because, again, it goes back to this culture of corruption that is so embedded in this government. And so here we are, nearly more than 2 months after this House ordered the government to turn over all documents relating to SDTC so that they in turn can be turned over by the law clerk to the RCMP. And more than 2 months later, we still don't have the documents. And it begs the question, why? And the only plausible explanation is that what is contained in those documents is really, really bad. We know, based upon the Auditor General's report, that there was a total lack of oversight at SDTC. We know that in some instances the government, ministers of this government, encouraged or tolerated conflicts of interest, such as Baines hand-picking Verscheren to serve as chair, notwithstanding that she had a conflict of interest. And we know that these ministers had to have known that all was not well at SDTC, given the fact that they had an eyes and ears sitting in on each of these meetings. And we also know, Madam Speaker, from the whistleblower, that despite the minister's assertion that he took action when he learned of wrongdoing, that isn't so, that the minister was more interested in protecting himself and protecting the insiders who got rich, and was prepared to take steps to cover up for as long as possible this massive scandal. Well, Madam Speaker, the government's refusal to turn over the documents, to black out thousands and thousands of pages of documents, is a continuation of the cover-up. And, Madam Speaker, the bottom line is that heads need to roll. There needs to be accountability. We need to get fully to the bottom of this massive scandal. If there's criminal wrongdoing, then the RCMP needs that evidence, and taxpayers need to be made whole from these Liberal insiders. And so long as this government continues to block and obstruct this House order, we're going to continue to stand up for taxpayers and demand the release of the documents.
Wow, man, that was all rehearsed or off the cuff?
10 minutes of questions. And
holy smokes.
This matter is before the House. Statements by members. Déclaration de député. The honourable member.
That's wild. You don't see Liberals pull that off.
Over 150 years, Chinese Canadians have made remarkable contributions to Canada. From working in mines and railways in the past to driving Canada's leadership in the knowledge-based economy and advanced technologies, Chinese Canadians have been and continue to be a vital force in Canada's socio-economic development. With a rich cultural heritage spanning thousands of years, the Chinese people have profoundly contributed to humanity through advancements in science, medicine, and
Next are with the 5 saying Tug Meat is gonna tug on some meat and vote confidence in Trudeau.
This invaluable culture and heritage, ensuring that all
Woody doppelganger with the 2 saying kangaroo for PM at this point.
Can learn from and celebrate.
You know, man, juice box water bottle thingy.
On Canada to designate
Sir Aussie Charming with a 1 month member.
Heritage Month.
Hello, Mistersunshinebaby. Happy to celebrate my 1 month membership with you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Member for Regina, Wisconsin. Mr. Speaker, when a child becomes sick,
Clayton LeBlanc, welcome to the membership. William James, welcome to the membership program.
This burden becomes so much greater by the fact that hospitals with pediatric services are often located a significant distance from the family's home. This is where Ronald McDonald House Charities steps in to provide accommodations, meals, peer support, and other services to the entire family while their child is being treated in a nearby hospital. Unfortunately, my home city of Regina is one of the major centres in Canada that, until now, does not have a Ronald McDonald House, despite the growing need. Fortunately, RMHC recently launched their Miles to Go campaign to build a new facility in Regina within walking distance from the Regina General Hospital. I applaud Ronald McDonald House Charities for investing in the Regina General Hospital neighbourhood, and I encourage everyone to support this worthwhile cause. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well done, well done.
Angela Pence with the 2. Justice will be served legally or illegally.
Christmas is fast approaching.
Oh, I don't even want to know what that means.
Professional Firefighters Association toy drive. Children in
Woody Doppelganger with the 2. Liberal and ADP. The very definition of glorified thieves.
For 5,100.
I mean, we're going to see it again, right? They support tax breaks, but they don't support tax cuts.
At any
only tax breaks.
Or at the
Temporary tax
toy
breaks.
drive at Coronation Park on December 13th from 5 till 9. The toy drive has been led by Kurt Merriman for over a decade. Kurt grew the toy drive significantly, putting in thousands of volunteer hours to bring Christmas joy to so many. He partnered with local organizations, including the Toronto Rock, to be able to provide more and more kids with gifts each year. Kurt has left Oakville for a new position in the fire service, and on behalf of all members in this House, I'd like to thank him for his elf work in Oakville with the toy drive. Bravo. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Shefford. In 2024, we highlight the 30th anniversary of the Community Association of Otiamaska. 160 people met to celebrate this event. We to recognise the inestimable work done by all the member organisations. Certificates were awarded to the various organisations to highlight their commitment to the community over time. To highlight this, Christian Morissette, a singer and songwriter, produced a music video for the company. We can be proud of this movement and its impact in defending seniors, women, people living with disabilities, the homeless, just to name a few. Over the last 30 years, they have defended their community to create and maintain coherence and cohesion in between organisations. Nicolas and all the team, happy 30th and long life to your organisation. The Honourable Member for Argenteuil-la-Petite-Nation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At this time of the year, when we are all getting ready to celebrate Christmas and the New Year.
Hey, just a reminder, folks, if you haven't yet already, I'd like to encourage you guys to smash the like button and subscribe. It does really help grow the channel.
Whilst the commercial giants offer an array of discounted items, we must not forget small businesses, artisans, and farmers and producers in our communities. Buying local means investing in our economy by helping to create jobs, as well as supporting local businesses and producers, especially my region. It also means reducing our ecological footprint, because the fewer the kilometres between us and our products, the less the products will have to be transported and therefore less greenhouse gas. This Christmas, let us buy local and let us support our local trade.
The Honourable Member for Calgary-Nose Hill.
Last month, as part of an anti-Israel mob in Montreal, a woman named Mai Abdelhadi was recorded giving Nazi salutes and stating that the final solution was coming. It turns out that this woman was a franchise owner of 2 Second Cup cafes at Montreal's Jewish hospital. Peter Mamis, the CEO of the company that owns the Second Cup coffee chain, swiftly issued a statement unequivocally condemning the deplorable actions of this woman and immediately terminated her relationship with his company. I would like to commend Mr. Mamis for demonstrating moral clarity when it was required. By acting swiftly and decisively, he showed that he would give no quarter to anti-Semites. Compare that to the actions of this Liberal government, who have tried to appease those who stoke division and hate in Canada. That it took the Prime Minister almost a day to issue any sort of statement with regard to the recent anti-Semitic Montreal riots is a disgrace. Thank you.
I thought the mayor of Montreal said they weren't anti-Semitic.
Clarity needed to maintain Canada's peaceful pluralism. The Prime Minister could learn a thing or two from him.
The honourable member for Scarborough-Guildwood.
Mr. Speaker, December 2nd marks the International Day for the Abolition of Slavery. Most of us think about the Atlantic slave trade insofar as we think about slavery at all. World Vision estimates that there are multiple more people enslaved now than there were then.
Mr. Krabs with the 5 U.S. It's like 50 Canadian. Gonna see some huge changes in the next 2 years. Trump 2024.
May of this year. What the report shows.
Yeah, I agree. We just need Pierre to go a little bit more Trump.
Of the 6,000 entities reporting, 38% identified disturbing issues. Multiple more did not report at all. I take some encouragement from the government's willingness to be proactive, but the data needs to be analyzed, needs at least one more reporting cycle, and more entities need to be willing or unwillingly brought into the regime. Slavery may be as old as humanity, Mr. Speaker, but it doesn't mean that you need to support it by purchasing its products.
The honourable member for Thunder Bay, Rainy River.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday was World AIDS Day, a day to remember the 42 million people who've died from AIDS, to remember our relatives and our friends. I remember in 1982 as a medical student seeing a poster about a mysterious outbreak of a deadly pneumonias in the gay community of San Francisco. 4 years later in Toronto, we were seeing a lot of cases of AIDS. In the late 1980s in Swaziland in southern Africa where I was working, it went from 0 cases of HIV to 26% of pregnant women being HIV positive within a few short years. AIDS was and is a pandemic. HIV and AIDS was for a long time absolutely a death sentence.
We're like 200 people away from hitting 124,000 subs on this channel. So out of the almost 4,000 you watching, there's a couple hundred of you that aren't subscribed.
People globally,
might as well hit it.
Absolutely been one of the greatest triumphs.
It's free.
Of the modern era.
Helps fight climate change for all I care. Tax deductible.
Honourable member for Brantford Brent.
Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister has completely lost control of Canada's borders. Today, there are over 260,000 unprocessed refugee claims, a staggering 2,500% increase since 2015, when there was just one shy of 10,000. Government documents also show that up to 3 million temporary resident visas will expire by the end of next year. Yet the immigration
Cover Top's PB Game. Welcome to the membership. I appreciate that.
Voluntarily. At committee, he deflected, offering vague responses about monitoring and partnerships. Canadians deserve better than a minister who can't explain how his department enforces immigration rules. After 9 years of chaos, it's clear that this NDP Liberal coalition has no plan to fix the immigration system they've broken. Even migrant activists have stated that voluntary compliance is not happening. Only a Conservative government will fix our broken borders and ensure it works for Canadians first.
Mr. McCauley.
The honourable member for Humber River, Black Creek.
Our government continues to take decisive and aggressive action to address crime across Canada, having created offences to target organized crime gangs that exploit young people. We have also invested over $600 million into fighting guns and gangs and passed gun control laws to take violent weapons out of our communities. These efforts and many more have been implemented to tackle crime and invest in public safety. I would like to recognize the dedicated
guns and gangs. I thought it was law-abiding gun owners that committed crime, according to Liberals.
Superintendent Mandy Van, Inspector Jack Kerr, and Officer Melody Carroll. Their tireless efforts, often under challenging circumstances, ensure the safety, well-being, and growth of our community. However, safety isn't just about law enforcement. It requires the active participation of all of us in Humber River Black Creek, including countless community groups and grassroots organizations that play an invaluable role in this effort. By working together, police, local organizations, and residents, we can build safer, stronger communities for all. Thank you.
The honourable member for Haldeman Norfolk.
Mr. Speaker, once again, the NDP Liberals are politicizing environmental protection. Instead of focusing on real, tangible results, they're pushing another ideological campaign that will further impoverish Canadians. At a time when 2 million Canadians are going to the food bank every single month, the Liberals are planning to quadruple.
Nasty with 2. Like and subscribe if you want Trudeau out. Yeah, we're like 100 people away.
The residents of Ontario by
from 124K
billion to the electricity generation cost by 2030. Their clean energy plan cannot even be achieved without compromising our grid. Ontario is pleading with the Liberal government to reverse course on these draconian ideological energy mandates. Only Conservatives will protect Canadians from energy poverty and restore energy prosperity to Canada.
Way to go.
The honourable member for Renfrew, Nipissing Pembroke.
Mr. Speaker, today Feed Ontario released its annual hunger report. Over 1 million Ontarians had to access the food bank in the last year. That's more than double the number from the last 4 years. Every day, more Canadians struggle to afford food because of the actions of this Prime Minister. Higher prices are the official policy of the Liberal Party. They plan to quadruple the carbon tax by 2030 to 61 cents a litre on gas. They want to ban 95% of plastic food packaging. When Liberals tax the farmer who grows the food and the trucker who ships the food, then bans the packaging of food, higher prices are the only result. Canadians need to know this is the Liberal policy. If you can't afford to go to the grocery store, you emit less carbon. If you can't afford the price of beef, you emit less carbon. Canadians can't afford this Prime Minister. That's why we need a carbon tax election now.
I like that. That was good. David Tones with the 11-11. No comment today, just a little support for you and yours.
Today to address a puzzle.
Thanks, Wizard. I appreciate that.
For years, the Conservative leader and his party have lectured Canadians about the virtues of tax cuts. Yet when given the chance to support a GST tax break that puts money in the pockets of working families, what do? They vote against it. The Conservative leader carefully crafts an image of caring for Canadians, but when given the chance to support them with tangible relief, he turns his back on them. Voting against dental care for seniors, voting against the school food program for kids. Mr. Speaker,
I think that super chat's going to pay for our dinner tonight, man.
A Conservative leader,
the only affordable place to go eat.
He's forgotten the people.
Is the Costco cafeteria.
Works, Mr. Speaker.
3 hot dogs with drinks.
Canadians.
And a poutine. We share that between my wife and I and our 2-year-old daughter. It's like $10.64.
Order. The honourable member for Esquimalt Saanich Soo.
We're going to start here soon, folks.
Yesterday marked World AIDS Day. Each year we remember those lost and celebrate the strength and resiliency of those living with HIV/AIDS, those who have supported and cared for them over the past 40 years, and the doctors and researchers who have made significant advances in treatment possible so that ending HIV is now in sight. Canada has adopted the goal set by UNAIDS of eliminating new HIV cases by 2030. But we are falling far short on the actions necessary to make this a reality. Instead, new cases in this country are skyrocketing, up 35% overall in the past year, up 88% in Edmonton. This year's UNAIDS report tells us what we must do. We must work to destigmatize HIV by decriminalizing non-disclosure.
By discriminating.
Access to testing and treatment universal and accessible for those at risk by increasing funding to community-based frontline service organizations who can reach people where they are. 2 of those proposals are on the Minister of Health's desk right now. And there's still time to meet the 2030 goal if this government listens to HIV organizations across the country and acts now.
The honourable member for Repentigny. Today I would like to pay tribute to an exceptional woman, Huguette.
XRP is pumping.
For the past 15 years, Huguette has devoted herself to defending the rights of seniors in Repentigny.
I've got the price pulled up on my other monitor, actually.
2016, Huguette fights tirelessly against...
I don't understand this crypto stuff, man, but it's making people money. It's craziness.
Her dedication has been recognized many times over. Ambassador for Mediation in 2019, recipient of the Michel Aguette Prize in 2021. Huguette even achieved a treble this year, winning the Seniors Prize for la Naudière, the Medal of the Assemblée Nationale, as well as being inducted as Knight of the Repentigny Order.
Apparently there's a lot of people in the chat that are...
To her in this house. Madame Plouffe, you are an inspiration to us all, a true force of nature.
Invested in XRP.
Thank you for your enthusiasm, your generosity, and your unwavering commitment.
Who's giving out XRP? I'll take some.
Fabric of our community.
That stuff don't make sense. Here we go.
The Honourable Member for Prince George Peace River Northern Wales.
After 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, Canadians are struggling. Taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and their time is up. Even the NDP leader admits that the Liberal government is greedy and anti-worker. He's right. The Liberals have proven themselves too weak and too selfish to fight for everyday Canadians. But the NDP have propped up this government at every turn, choosing political survival over the well-being of Canada. Canadians are tired of the NDP saying one thing and doing another. Now their leader faces a crucial decision. Will he stand by his own words or continue to prop up this corrupt Liberal government? Soon, we will present a motion of non-confidence made entirely from the NDP leader's own statements and say that the House proclaims it has lost confidence in the Prime Minister and the government. The question is, will he vote yes or will he vote no? The choice is his. Canadians are watching.
Well said. Here we go.
L'honorable député de Sackville, Preston, Chesapeake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It seems the Conservative leader has a talent for saying one thing and doing another. Conservatives love to wrap themselves in the flag of tax cuts, but last week they voted against our tax break. That's right, Mr. Speaker. The Conservative leader said no to putting more money back in the pockets.
This guy looks like a cartoon.
Canadians are wondering, do Conservatives believe...
Can't believe this is a real person.
Or is it just a soundbite for their YouTube channel? Mr. Speaker, this government believes in action, not slogans.
You are the soundbite, buddy.
Bold solutions. We will keep delivering for Canadians.
Here we go.
Questions.
Oral questions. Questions orales. Honourable Leader of the Opposition, Pierre Poilievre.
Mr. Speaker, more evidence today that the Prime Minister has lost control over spending. The Auditor General has confirmed that this Liberal government gave $3.5 billion from the emergency fund to businesses that were not eligible. That's 10% of recipients. 77,000 businesses, and all of that administered by a consulting company that costs still more money. Doesn't that show that this Prime Minister is not worth the cost or the corruption? The Honourable Minister of Small Business.
This question is coming from the Leader of the Opposition who called our life-saving supports for small businesses big, fat government supports and quoted that the Conservatives don't believe in this kind of support. When times are tough, small businesses will not be supported by the Conservative Party of Canada. And on this side of the House, we were there to support close to 900,000 small businesses to keep them from bankruptcy and economic uncertainty. And we will continue to be there for them, Mr. Speaker.
Shut the hell up. You want a tax pause, not a tax cut.
The Honourable Leader, l'Honorable Chef de l'Opposition.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. And now, Mr. Speaker, Canadians know that I'm right.
Yeah.
Instead of giving businesses that deserved it some funding, the government wasted $3.5 billion. And in addition, they increased the bureaucracy by 40% to administer these programs. But that seemingly wasn't enough. So they hired Accenture, a consulting company, with another $200 million. This company is partly managed from Brazil, Mr. Speaker. Why? Always more consultants, more bureaucrats, and more corrupt individuals who are getting money from this government. The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General, Mr. Speaker, let's talk about businesses. What have we done for businesses over the last week or so.
Farkle.
We have increased the pollution pricing rebate to give that money to businesses. And last week alone, we cut GST so that there will be a GST holiday for businesses throughout Canada. And meanwhile, what is the leader of the opposition doing? He decided to vote against all that. Not just him, but his entire caucus. They all voted against these efforts to help business. That's what the Conservative Party of Canada represents.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
More proof today that this weak Prime Minister, has lost control of spending. The Auditor General reports that his government gave out $3.5 billion of so-called CEBA loans to companies that did not qualify, a total of 77,000 of them.
Wow.
That's 10% of all recipients. On top of that, they then gave a massive implementation contract to high-priced consultants at Accenture who cost $200 million and farmed out a lot of the work to Brazil. Isn't it more proof that this Prime Minister is not worth the cost or the corruption?
The Honourable Minister for Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises.
Mr. Speaker, I find it ironic because for the member from the Mission, Mesky Fraser, actually sent me a letter advocating for CEBA loans to support a small business in his own riding. You see, Mr. Speaker, he understands the value of the CEBA loans because it was a lifeline for small businesses during an unprecedented time, and so we're going to continue to help support businesses, keep their doors open, keep their lights on, and keep their employees working. Mr. Speaker, I find it's unfortunate because this is another example of a letter that the Leader of the Opposition did not know about.
Ooh, that's not received very well in the House.
Mr. Speaker, our members champion their constituents who are eligible for assistance. Not 77,000 companies that should not have received the $3.5 billion in misspent dollars. All this while Canadians are starving. Today, the hunger report is out from Feed Ontario, and there have been 1 million Ontarians who lined up 7 million times at the food bank after this Prime Minister brought in a carbon tax on the truckers and farmers who bring us our food. When will they axe the tax?
Yeah, not pause the tax.
The Honourable Minister for Families, Children and Social Development.
Mr. Speaker, of course, we thank Feed Ontario and the food banks across this country who do amazing work. Let me quote from the report that was just mentioned. In June 2022, those over the age of 75 received a permanent 10% increase in old age security alongside inflationary increases. After that change, the percentage of food bank visitors who were seniors began to decrease. This, in addition to the measures we put forward for families, Mr. Speaker, we will continue to deliver for Canadians while they oppose at every opportunity.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, over the last 5 years, food prices in Canada have increased 37% faster than in the United States. That gap opened after the introduction of the carbon tax, which this government now, with the NDP's help, wants to quadruple. The consequence is that in the last 4 years, food bank use in Ontario is up 86%, and 1 in 4 children go to school hungry, according to this government's own data. So why won't they axe this crazy plan to quadruple the carbon tax? In fact, why not axe the tax altogether?
The Honourable Leader of the Government.
Not pause it. We want it gone.
Mr. Speaker, yet another example of the Conservative leader talking about one thing and doing another. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to supporting children, we have been negotiating school food agreements that are helping actually 200,000 children across this country.
200,000 kids is costing us like $5 billion.
He talks about lowering taxes, but last week he made every single one of his MPs vote against a GST tax cut for Canadians. He also talks about wanting to hold an opposition day, but we gave him an opportunity today and he ran away from it. Mr. Speaker, that's what weakness looks like when it comes to leadership. Thank you, Mr.
Speaker.
The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, the AG report shows very clearly that the Liberals are thumbing their nose at seniors. The federal government doesn't seem to have any idea if its programs like old age security will actually help seniors. It has no idea if pension indexing actually matches inflation. They don't actually know if they should do more for seniors. And when they do get data, like the CMHC data showing that their housing strategy is letting seniors fall through the cracks, they ignore that data. So how can they preach to seniors and tell them that they're too wealthy to deserve more assistance? The Honourable Minister of Labour. Mr. Speaker, my friend across the way would be more credible if he hadn't systematically voted against all the support that we have chosen to implement during the pandemic and afterward to help our seniors, including the guaranteed income supplement increase. And yes, housing programs that will house more seniors in Quebec and throughout our country. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc Québécois is not in a position to lecture us on the topic of supporting seniors.
Literally anybody does a better job than you guys.
Well, I would choose to believe the Auditor General over the Minister. And the report shows that the federal government doesn't even know or have any evidence to show whether it's helping seniors. But they do seem to know that seniors are too wealthy to deserve a pension increase from 65 to 74 years of age, a 10% increase. They seem to know that, and that seniors are too wealthy to deserve a $250 check, which is somehow still being offered to people who earn $150,000 a year. Do they also know that seniors are totally fed up with their contemptuous behavior?
It's going to be like the COOF. They're going to recall that money back if they sent it out to people that they shouldn't have.
To helping seniors, despite the headwinds that we're experiencing from the other side of the House, from the Conservatives and the Bloc Québécois, who are time after time systematically voting against our supports to seniors. Just think of the dental plan. We offered that to help Canadians, but the Bloc Québécois systematically voted against it. Hundreds of thousands of Quebecers are benefiting from that plan, but the Bloc Québécois is against it. It is shocking.
L'honorable député de Rosemont.
The Honourable Member for Rosemont, La Petite Patrie. Mr. Speaker, people are worried about their jobs. They don't have any idea whether they'll be able to pay for rent or groceries. And Donald Trump's tariffs will make that worse and make the prices of everything higher. Last week, the Prime Minister met with Trump, but other than a nice photo op, he came home empty-handed. At the very least, was he clear with the future American president that attacking...
I think he came home with his balls in his hands after Trump cut him off for him.
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker...
He's the only MP that was there with Trudeau.
The tariffs that the Americans are considering will have extremely harmful effects on Canadian workers and the economy, but also harmful effects on the American economy and workers. And with that in mind, our delegation spoke with President-elect Trump and his future secretaries about the integration of our two economies. We spoke about our border security, of course. It was a positive discussion, and I believe that we will be able to continue working with President-elect Trump.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton-Griesbach.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are worried about their jobs and whether they can afford to put food on the table. Donald Trump's unfair tariffs will threaten those jobs and jack up prices for Canadians. Last week, the Prime Minister met with him, but he has nothing to show for it, and he came back empty-handed. Canadian workers want to know, did the Prime Minister make it clear to Donald Trump that balancing the U.S. budget on the backs of Canadian workers won't work for Canada?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I don't want to disagree with my friend from Edmonton-Griesbach, but the idea that we came back empty-handed is completely false. He knows very well that we had a productive discussion with Mr. Trump and his future cabinet secretaries. The Prime Minister, of course, spoke about the importance of protecting the Canadian economy and Canadian workers from tariffs, but we also discussed with our American friends the negative impact that those tariffs could have on their economy, on an affordability in the United States as well. And Mr. Speaker, I think the commitment from President Trump to continue to work with us was far from empty-handed.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Just a few short years, the Prime Minister has lost control of the deficit of immigration and of our border. He gave us a 2,500% increase in the number of unprocessed refugee claims, and he still thinks that 3 million temporary residents are going to leave this country voluntarily. Canada is staring down the barrel at 25% tariffs thanks to his open border policies, his free drugs for everyone plan, and his economic vandalism. The Prime Minister can mitigate that all today. Where's the Canada First plan to keep our borders safe?
They don't have one. NDP's policy is non-delivering politicians.
Speaker,
That's what it stands for.
Serious. She supports the leader of the opposition who sat idly by in government while they cut money to border enforcement at the Canada-U.S. borders, cut at the immigration refugee border. And for those of them that are saying this is ancient history, we proposed an asylum reform package in May, and you know what the Conservatives did? And the clapping.
His hands are shaking.
The Finance Committee, they voted against it and voted it down. They can support us in our asylum reform if they so choose. I encourage them to do so.
The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Speaker, they've been in government for 9 years. They've known for years that immigration was out of control. They knew for years that asylum claims were out of control, and they knew for years that our border was broken. Right. None of what newly elected President Trump has been campaigning on was a secret. And the Prime Minister even threw that minister under the bus for his incompetence in immigration. If we're going to save Canadian jobs, we need a plan yesterday to fix the disorder at the border. So I'll ask again, where is the Canada First plan to keep our border safe?
Here, here. The Honourable Minister for Citizenship, Refugees and Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, this is from the gleeful authors of the Barbaric Practices Snitch Line. That was their approach to immigration when they last had a chance. We have been very serious with President Trump about our intention to secure the border. It is something that we clearly intend to do. They have an opportunity to do a number of things, and that is to support any asylum reform that we put in front of the House. I encourage them to break their silliness in the House and to do so.
Right on. The Honourable Member for Saskatoon West.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years, this NDP Liberal government has broken our borders. They brought in 3 million temporary residents that need to leave Canada in the next year. But they have no way to know if they will actually leave. Will they go back home? Will they stay here illegally? Will they cross over the U.S. border?
They're absolutely going to stay here illegally.
The elect has made it very clear that there are no more free rides for our broken borders. The bottom line is, these Liberals don't know. Mr. Speaker, we need a Canadian plan, for a Canada First plan to fix our broken borders. Where is it?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, one of the first things in our plan was to reverse some of the draconian cuts that the previous Conservative government made to the brave women and men who work in Canadian Border Services. We take the issue of border integrity and border security seriously, as do the Americans. Our discussion on Friday evening with our American friends, Mr. Speaker, was very much about the joint work that we could continue to do together. That work has been done for decades between Canadian and American law enforcement. It has kept both countries safe and secure, and we're prepared to continue to do more as well.
The Honourable Member for Saskatoon West.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister went to Mar-a-Lago to kiss the ring and returned with nothing. All while there's serious gaps in our...
The Liberals are not going to be happy about that one.
There are over 260,000 unprocessed refugee claims right now in the system. The Liberals are paying out billions of dollars every year for hotels, food, and medical costs for these claimants. They're even allowed to work while they wait nearly 4 years to be processed. Why would people leave Canada voluntarily when they can hitch themselves to this NDP Liberal gravy train? Mr. Speaker, where is the Canada First plan to keep our borders secure?
Before I recognize the Honourable Minister, I just want to encourage all members on all sides of the House, please, out of respect for those who do depend on simultaneous translation, please allow them to hear the questions and the answers which are given in the House by not taking the floor when you're not recognized by the Speaker. The Honourable Minister for Citizenship, Immigration and Refugees.
while the leader of the opposition was in his basement figuring out what rhyme to put up on Twitter to express his displeasure with the government, the Prime Minister of Canada was meeting with Donald Trump, our most important partner. That is responsible. At the same time, when he's not doing that in his basement, Mr. Speaker, he's skipping around the Greater Toronto Area, promising everyone and anyone visas to this country and not to deport them. That is not responsible. That's not serious. We plan to be serious.
You're so weird and awkward, dude.
Again, I'm going to ask all members to not take the floor unless they recognize the Speaker, and I'll refer specifically to the member from New Brunswick Southwest to please not do so.
L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, for 9 years, we've been asking this Prime Minister to wake up and take back control of our borders. But he's doing the exact opposite. For example, in 2015, unprocessed asylum claims were less than 10,000, but today it's gone up to 260,000 cases. We have asked him for more surveillance at our borders, to cooperate more with provincial police forces, and to fight human trafficking, illegal entry, and drugs trafficking, among other problems. We have proposed a plan. Will he implement it? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, once again, on Friday, we had very cordial and constructive discussions with our American partners. We discussed border security at our shared border. We talked about integrating our law enforcement agencies with our American partners. We spoke about the important work that the RCMP is doing to fight fentanyl trafficking, drug seizures, and other operations, again, often in cooperation with our American allies.
Where have you been in the past 9 years? Only now you're taking it seriously because Papa Trump
Mr. Speaker,
is forcing you to?
President Trump has just asked the Prime Minister to do something just now, but we've been asking for that for 9 years. We've been asking for more measures to end weapons and drugs trafficking and auto theft, but he ignores us. Weapons trafficking and auto theft are a huge problem in Quebec. We have proposed increased measures at the Port of Montreal and at the border, but nothing is changing. We have a plan. Will the Prime Minister implement it? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, our colleague across the way has a whole list of things that actually our government has accomplished. We have worked with the police services. We have done everything we could to reverse the cuts of the former Conservative government. If my colleague was really serious about national security, then I would encourage him to tell his boss to get his essential security clearance so he can actually get information to protect his own political party.
He doesn't need it.
For example,
he can be told the names without a security clearance.
Indian foreign interference. It would perhaps be somewhat useful for the Conservative leader to do that.
Tell us why. Why would it be useful?
Honourable Member for Talbot.
Give us a name.
Mr. Speaker, we've had ArriveCan, and now the AG has told us about a new subcontracting scandal, the Accenture scandal. Ottawa gave $313 million to this multinational company in order to take care of implementing the CEBA business loan program during the pandemic. That's more than 5 times the cost of ArriveCan. But just like for ArriveCan, this money was granted without a bid for tender, without a spending cap, and with no kind of follow-up check. The AG says that no department took on responsibility for the program. Mr. Speaker, are the Liberals allergic to accountability? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Mr. Speaker, quite the contrary. We care about accountability.
At least he's got a Canadian pen on.
Hard work.
I don't like the Liberals.
Work is rigorous and important.
But at least they got a Canadian pin on versus the NDP,
what's also important to underscore,
they got the freaking Gaza pin or Palestinian pin or whatever.
The only thing the Conservatives wanted to do, according to their leader, was to reduce taxes for the biggest, richest businesses so that hopefully those businesses would hire the hundreds of thousands of Canadians who are losing their jobs. These kinds of measures would have led to bankruptcy for thousands of SMEs throughout the country. The Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, nobody knows how Accenture managed to spend our $313 million, and the Liberals are refusing to tell us. The Department of Finance refused the AG's recommendation to look into the accountability gaps. They're washing their hands of the problem. This is a really low bar for accountability. With $313 million spent with no bid for tender or follow-up, the least the government could do would be to accept the AG's recommendations. If the Finance Department is refusing to look into this, I have to wonder if it's because they're worried that Quebecers will learn that they've been duped once again. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Deputy Prime Minister. The emergency business account helped innumerable businesses in Quebec and elsewhere and kept them from having to turn to bankruptcy.
Hey, reminder, guys, if you haven't yet already, I'd really appreciate it if you guys smash the like button and subscribe to this channel.
Paycheck.
It helps with growth.
4 years later, the Bloc Québécois is getting up to complain about this. Maybe they want to change the channel because last week they voted against a tax rebate. Mr. Speaker, it's hard to believe the Bloc Québécois is voting against measures that would make the lives of Canadians easier, especially during the holiday period. The Honourable Member for Talbot. Well, let's focus here. The CEO of Export Development Canada revealed at the Public Accounts Committee that $149 million were granted to Accenture. But today we've heard from the AG that actually the number was $313 million. That's more than double. So how did we get to $313 million? Well, no one wants to tell us. The department is refusing to look into it. It's shocking. Mr. Speaker, Quebecers are paying their taxes with the hope and expectation that the money will be invested intelligently, and now they can only conclude that the Liberals are once again abusing their trust. The Honourable Minister for Small Business. Mr. Speaker, I find the Bloc Québécois' position hypocritical because they would have promoted policies that actually led to higher costs. Small businesses were just asking for help to keep their doors open and to keep people working, and we did help them. Small businesses know that we will always be there to stand up for them.
The Honourable Member for Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Speaker, for 8 consecutive years, food bank usage has risen in Ontario, a timeline that matches the corruption and incompetence of the NDP Liberal government. They caused the cost of living crisis, a crisis where even 25% of Ontarians who have jobs need to use the food bank. Canadians deserve relief from this cost of living crisis. So will the Prime Minister cancel his plans to quadruple the carbon tax and call a carbon tax election now?
No. That's what we want to see.
The Honourable Minister for Families, Children and Youth.
Well, great news, Mr. Speaker. Last week I was in PEI where we announced another province that
Nails on a chalkboard, eh?
National School Food Program. That's 184,000 kids this school year that will receive food at school. Almost 1.5 million more meals at school, Mr. Speaker, for a program that the Leader of the Opposition contends doesn't exist. I challenge him to ask those 184 children who are getting food at school. They'll school him, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's the NDP Liberals that have caused this cost of living crisis. More than 1 million Ontarians had to use a food bank last year. The NDP Liberals still can't do basic math. They still don't understand that if you tax the farmer who grows the food and tax the trucker who ships the food, you're taxing the families who then buy the food. So this Prime Minister has completely lost touch with reality. So will he take a walk in the snow and call a carbon tax election?
What a Canadian diss, eh? Take a walk in the snow, bud.
The Honourable Leader of the Government.
I love this country.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative members of Parliament are so ridiculous. They had an opportunity today to put forward a vote of the confidence in the government, and they decided not to, Mr. Speaker. So yet again, we see Conservative MPs talking out of one side of their mouth, but when it comes time to acting, they just can't deliver. Mr. Speaker, we are here to work for Canadians, and we're doing real things that are delivering for real Canadians, like school food programs, like the Canada Child Benefit, get, like dental care, that are helping Canadians make ends meet while all they do is puff hot air. Thank you, Mr.
Speaker. Order. The honourable member from Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock.
Speaker, while the Liberals try to distract Canadians with tax tricks on Christmas trees and alcohol, more than 1 million Ontarians turn to the food bank to feed themselves. Food bank use has risen in 8 of the 9 years this NDP Liberal government has been in power. In the last 2 years alone, food bank usage in Ontario has risen by 73%. Wow. Worse, almost 25% of those food bank users had jobs, providing more evidence that the Prime Minister's cost of living crisis is deepening. Canadians have had enough, Speaker. Will the Prime Minister do the right thing? Call a carbon tax election right now.
Don't pause the tax.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Tax it. Get rid of it.
Minister of Finance.
Giving a tax break to Canadians is real, Mr. Speaker. When you go to the cash, when you're trying
It's only 60 days, though, according to you, Rachel.
You're not going to pay GST. When you go to cash at the grocery store, you're not going to pay GST on everyday items, Mr. Speaker. When you go to the restaurant, either. This is real money back in the pockets of Canadians. The Conservatives talk about vulnerable Canadians who are having a rough time. They vote against support for Canadians on every single occasion. They stand up in this House and oppose a tax break. They're opposing a tax cut, Mr. Speaker. The Conservative Party of Canada, they've lost all sense.
The honourable member for London Fanshawe.
It's unacceptable that 1 in 5 emergency rooms in Ontario had unplanned shutdowns this year. The Prime Minister's praise of Doug Ford's innovation in healthcare resulted in 2024 being the worst year for emergency room closures in Ontario. The Liberals have given Ford billions of dollars in no-strings-attached healthcare funds, only for more closures and uncertainty. Ontarians deserve better. Will the Prime Minister take responsibility for funding Doug Ford's privatization scheme, or will he continue to leave Ontarians waiting?
The Honourable Minister for Health.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And of course, those agreements.
Is he wearing a bow tie?
$200 billion over 10 years. Absolutely.
Hey, no bow tie today.
With common indicators and shared priorities. In fact, we just saw Kai Hai's report showing for the first time in Canadian history actually in data where we are. And what that data shows us is that nearly every jurisdiction across the country has more doctors, more nurses, that surgical wait times are back to where they were at the before the pandemic, and that we're making really important progress. It's essential the provinces step up and do their part, but we're making really important progress in our health system.
The honourable member for Windsor West.
Mr. Speaker, border officers want to do their part in protecting Canada, but they need more tools to help stop the flow of toxic drugs, stolen cars and guns. The Conservative leader fired over 1,100 border officers when he was in cabinet, including sniffer dogs and frontline staff, and the Liberals never hired them back. New Democrats have been calling on the government for years to invest more in CBSA frontline workers. Will the Liberals stop letting people down and hire back the officers the Conservatives fired and give them the tools they need to do their job?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank our colleague from Windsor West for that question and share his support for the extraordinary women and men that work for the Canadian Border Services Agency. Like him, I've had an opportunity to meet many of these women and men who serve in the security of our country and do very important work. I was glad he highlighted the draconian cuts that the previous Conservative government made to the Border Services Agency. I'm happy to tell him, Mr. Speaker, that we have reversed those cuts. We've hired considerably more Border Services officers. And the good news, Mr. Speaker, is we're going to continue to do more as well.
That's right.
The honourable member for Richmond Hill.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservative leader has built its reputation on bashing taxes, and yet when this government puts forward the tax break that will benefit all Canadians, he says no. Can the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development explain why this GST tax break for Canadians is so important and why the Conservative leader and his party would vote against a tax break that helps everyday people? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister for Families, Children and Social Development.
This tax break is exactly the kind of relief that Canadians need right now. The Conservative leader contends to be a champion of taxpayers, but when given the opportunity to axe a tax, not this one, Mr. Speaker. Conservative MPs...
Reminds me like my social studies teacher in like grade 7, you know? You just want to cut your ears off.
Slogans over solutions on this side will continue to deliver for Canadians.
The honourable member for Calgary-Midnapore.
After 9 years of this Liberal NDP government, Canadians are worse off. The U.S. GDP is up 2.8%, while the Canadian GDP is only up 1%. The Canadian GDP per capita is down 0.4%. This is the 6th consecutive quarter in which the Canadian GDP has been down. This Prime Minister does not have a plan. So will he step aside for a Prime Minister who does?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of, to the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
I think that member is misreading the numbers. Actually, Statistics Canada just revealed that they needed to revise the GDP numbers upwards for the last 3 years, Mr. Speaker. Canada is expected to have the highest GDP growth in all of the G7 next year, Mr. Speaker. I think what the Conservatives are trying to do is to change the channel. You see, just a few days ago, they opposed a tax break, Mr. Speaker. They opposed cutting the GST from everyday goods for Canadians, and they don't know how to explain it.
You're literally approved a 60-day pause
Speaker, after
on a tax.
9 years, Canada faces
and then you're doubling
another threat to its economy. The U.S. has threatened a 25% tariff on all goods exported from Canada. This greedy government has increased taxes with the carbon tax, housing taxes, increased capital gains taxes. Mr. Speaker, this is not just bad vibes. So will the Prime Minister admit that it's not bad vibes, but bad policy that forces Canadians to suffer?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Export Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Friday, the Prime Minister led a Canadian delegation to Florida to meet with President Trump. They had a productive discussion on border and economic security, including the impacts tariffs will have on both Canadian and American consumers. In 2018, it was this government that renegotiated NAFTA, which led to record trade just last year of $1.3 trillion, Mr. Speaker. As we have done through 3 American administrations, we will continue to stand up for Canadian workers and Canadian businesses. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I just can't stand the sound of Liberals. I don't know about you guys.
Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Lefjord. Mr. Speaker, once again this morning we found out that yet another sawmill is closing. Rapide des Joachim sawmill in Pontiac is the latest to get a taste of the weakness of this Liberal government. 10% of the town's workforce will lose their jobs. The economic repercussions for the town will be catastrophic. The threat of becoming a ghost town hangs over the village, just as it did in Sacré-Cœur in my region with the Caribou Decree. Why didn't the Prime Minister come back from Mar-a-Lago with any gains for forestry workers? When are we going to have an election?
Development and International Trade.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the member through you for that very important question. Mr. Speaker, the softwood lumber industry is very important to our government. We know it represents thousands of jobs from British Columbia down to Quebec, down to Eastern Canada. We will always stand up for Canadian softwood lumber. We stood up for Canada when the U.S. imposed aluminum and steel tariffs on us. And what did the Conservatives? They asked us to capitulate and back down. We have a proven track record to negotiate good trade deals. We will always stand up for lumber workers. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That's just such a load of crap.
Lefjord. Mr. Speaker, 23 workers have been laid off. And how many other indirect jobs depend on the factory in a village of just 188 residents? The threat of becoming a ghost town is very real. This is all because of the Liberal government's failure to reach an agreement on softwood lumber. This is the 4th sawmill in Quebec to announce its closure in just a few months. Our workers need a strong leader. When will we have an election so that we can elect the Conservative leader to be Prime Minister? The Honourable Minister of Fisheries, Oceans and the Coast Guard. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we're very disappointed that the American Department of Trade increased unfair, unjustified duties on Canadian softwood lumber. This is incredibly unfair and it is harmful to both producers and consumers on both sides of the border. Canadian workers are being punished by unfair tariffs, and this will also harm American lumber companies. The United States Department has to find a good, lasting solution, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, last week, on behalf of the Bloc Québécois, I tabled a bill that, if passed, would contribute significantly to the fight against organized crime. Not only would our bill create a list of criminal organizations, but it would also hit the bullseye by requiring members of these organizations to prove that their assets are not proceeds of their criminal activities. This would effectively reverse the burden of proof. This would send a clear message to criminals, Mr. Speaker. Will the government take up our bill and start taking the fight against organized crime seriously? The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General. Mr. Speaker, I appreciate this question because it addresses a very serious matter. Organized crime has increased here in Canada. What we are experiencing is that we need to address the situation. We made changes through Budget 2024 and the 2023 Fall Economic Statement for funding of organized crime. We also took action on car theft by investing more at the borders, and so car thefts have decreased by 40% in Quebec. Those are the results that this side of the House is delivering. The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, gang wars are on our streets. Gangs put bounties on journalists. They kill innocent people by setting fire to businesses. They even in broad daylight. They even take each other out in federal prisons. And what's the government doing? Where is the government?
Nothing.
The government is doing nothing, and it is nowhere. The Liberals could send a strong message to gangsters and pass our bill, but no. While they're dilly-dallying, the gangs continue to lay down the law and bring their wars to our streets. When will the government start taking the fight against organized crime seriously?
I mean, that's a freaking good point.
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General. When we have conferences and meetings with our counterparts, including Ministers Bonnardel and Jolin Barrette, we talk about investments. We have invested $132 million in our Guns and Gangs initiative, which especially helps Quebec. We also invested $42 million to make our communities safer. Through our investments, we have made significant efforts, and we have succeeded in reducing organized crime-related incidents such as car thefts. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I agree with the NDP leader who said the Liberal government will always step in to make sure unions have no power. The minister's Section 107 referrals took away workers' rights to strike. As a result of this, Conservatives believe that this Liberal government has lost the confidence of the House of Commons. Now, this puts the NDP and the NDP leader in a tough spot. Will he support his own words, support workers, or continue to prop up this NDP Liberal government? Or will the government throw their coalition buddy a line and call a carbon tax election?
Wow. You know, throw some W's in the chat for that. That was good.
Order.
That's the first order of the day.
Minister of Labour and Seniors.
Mr. Speaker, you would think this was not from the party that supported the anti-union oppressive Bill C-377 and Bill C-525. You would think this wasn't from the party who has in its own policy handbook the fact that they will be bringing in right-to-work Alabama-style legislation into this House. You would think that that wasn't the party that refused to debate that very motion this morning in this House of Commons.
He's laughing about it because he knows he had to fake the enthusiasm.
So his defense of his decision to take away a worker's right to strike is to talk about some things from a few years ago. Unions have unilaterally condemned the Section 107 referrals, and the NDP leader said he intervenes to take away unions' power. That's That's true. He took away the Teamsters' right to strike. He took away the ILWU's 514's right to strike. But when Unifor 1541 asked him to intervene to prevent union busting, this minister disappears. But the leader of the NDP has a choice to make. Will they keep propping up these guys that make these anti-worker decisions, or will he stand with his words and vote against?
I'm going to ask all members, please, to remind themselves that they have to keep their voices down so that those who participate
shut up, Greg,
can hear the interpretation. The Honourable Minister of Labour and for Seniors.
You would think that wasn't the party that opposed 10 sick days for employees in federally regulated industries. You would think that that was a party that didn't have right-to-work Mississippi-style legislation in its policy platform. You would think that wasn't the party whose very leader decried the involvement of unions in the procurement and other processes. Mr. Speaker, this Conservative Party is anti-worker. They've proved it on every single occasion that they're able to do it, and we will always stand for workers in this country.
The Honourable Member from Peterborough-Kawartha.
Today, the truth will be revealed. The Conservatives have put forward a non-confidence motion using the quote from the NDP leader where he said the Prime Minister is greedy and anti-worker. So what will it be? Will the leader of the NDP sell out Canadians yet again, or has that Prime Minister made another backroom deal that puts both of their lust for power over the rights of Canadians?
Yeah. He keeps saying he's fighting for Canadians, so do it.
For Labour.
I guess that member's back from announcing the housing projects in her riding that she voted against in this House of Commons. It is a joke, Mr. Speaker. It is a sick joke to watch these Conservatives line up behind this leader and his fake, false bravado, putting motions on the floor of this House. Then we ask them to debate those very motions. What do they say? No, Mr. Speaker. They refuse to debate their own motion. They will not debate help for Canadians. They will not debate tax cuts. They will not debate any support for Canadians in this House of Commons. This is a sick joke.
Wow. See, I don't take any joy in him throwing that little tantrum. Order. It just looks pathetic. He wants to mute the mic. Son of a bitch! You son of a bitch!
Lord, s'il vous plaît.
He did the gang sign!
Please.
Order.
You motherfucker.
L'honorable député de Châteauguay-Lacolle.
The Honourable Member for Châteauguay-Lacolle. Mr. Speaker, the global pandemic made things difficult for the hospitality industry, the tourism industry, and many of our retailers and restaurants too. Through programs like the Canada Emergency Business
Timing of that was pretty crazy, eh?
Stepped up to help businesses through that difficult time. Now, my constituents want to know what we're doing to help them post-recovery. Can the Minister for the Environment and Climate Change tell us about the government's plan? The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change. I thank my colleague for her question.
Oh, Harry Potsmoker.
For Canadian families and Canadian businesses, in good times and in bad times. Twice, though, we proposed tax cuts for the middle class, and on both occasions, the Conservative leader voted against the tax cuts and forced his party to join him in doing so. Today, with our GST cut, we are providing even more support for families and businesses. You'd think that the Conservatives would support this, but the only tax cuts they seem to support are for their rich friends and for big oil companies. It's always the same old story for the Conservative Party. Their interests and their friends' interests first, the interests of Canadians second.
For Calgary Forest Lawn.
The Auditor General exposed $3.5 billion for ineligible CEBA loans thanks to this incompetent Liberal NDP government. They were too incompetent to run this program themselves, so they gave a sole source contract to Accenture, a multinational corporation that gave most of the work to Brazilians, not Canadians. Canadians got taken to the cleaners for more than $300 million. Why are third-party contractors running this government and covering up ministers' incompetence?
Here, here. Good job. Good job.
The Honourable Minister for Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises.
Mr. Speaker, it's nice to know that there exists a report that the opposition can read without a security clearance. The member opposite and his party
Nope.
every single time
I don't like that.
care about small businesses when in fact
That's discrimination.
and support forward for small businesses, they always vote against it and decline.
Because he took his glasses off. She's making a reading joke.
Mr. Speaker, the CEBA loans were there and helped nearly 900,000 small businesses keep their lights on, keep their doors open, and keep their employees working. We will continue to be there to support small business, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Mission Mashpee Fraser Canyon.
Mr. Speaker, today the Auditor General released a bombshell report on the Canada Emergency Business Account. It highlights serious inefficiencies, a lack of government oversight, and $3.5 billion in losses to ineligible recipients. So how did we get here? The report outlined that the third-party program administrator, Accenture, set their own pricing, wrote their own contracts, ran procurement, and received 19 uncompetitive contracts for $313 million. Why can't the Liberals administer a government program without breaking a conflict of interest law?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister for Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises.
Mr. Speaker, I already talked about the fact that there exists a report that they can read that they don't need security clearance for. So here's the real bombshell, Mr. Speaker. When it comes to security clearance, there are more allegations that have come forward with regards to foreign interference in the Conservative Leadership Party race. Yet the Conservative leader chooses to ignore these security breaches in his own party. If the Conservative leader actually cared, he'd have nothing to hide. So, Mr. Speaker, can the leader of the Conservative Party get the clearance, take the briefing, and protect this country?
Stop pretending to care. You're a Liberal. We know you don't care.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General came down hard on Liberal corruption this morning. She revealed that $3.5 billion from the Canada Emergency Business Account was paid to companies that were ineligible. Worse yet, as in this case of the ArriveCan scandal, it was a private company, in this case Accenture, which established the criteria and costs of its own contract with the government. Mr. Speaker, why are the Ministers of Finance and Foreign Affairs continuing to illegally reward a private company at the expense of Canada's hard-hit small and medium enterprises? The Honourable Minister of Tourism and Economic Development. The Economic Development Agency, rather. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will repeat some of what my colleagues have said earlier. Just in case the colleague didn't hear the interpretation earlier, we're glad that the party is able to read through a report that they don't need a security clearance for. It's a public document that is available to the public. Now, there are thousands of businesses from coast to coast to coast that would not have survived the pandemic without our government's support. That's what we're here for. We're here to ensure that businesses can pay their employees, pay their expenses, and that they were able to remain resilient throughout the most significant pandemic in history.
Richmond Hill.
Mr. Speaker, we're in the midst of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. This campaign unites people across the country and the world to call out and speak up against acts of gender-based violence. Unlike the Conservative Party, our government has never wavered in supporting survivors of gender-based violence or investing in prevention. Could the Minister for Women and Gender Equality and Youth update the House on our government's commitment to addressing this crisis?
The Honourable Minister.
Our theme, Come Together, Act Now, Mr. Speaker, emphasizes that everyone plays a part, especially men and boys, to change attitudes and behaviors that contribute to gender-based violence. And this dangerous behavior is pervasive. Even the leader of the Conservative Party embedded misogynistic hashtags in his YouTube videos. Canadian women remember, Mr. Speaker, our government won't ever back down on supporting survivors. We created the first national action plan to end gender-based violence, backed by more than $500 million. We will not relent until every woman is safe.
Because he used MGTOW in his channel tags.
The honourable member for Nunavut.
First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples continue to be killed by the RCMP. In less than a month, 9 Indigenous peoples were killed without consequence. The RCMP and provincial authorities must respond towards reconciliation. Indigenous peoples deserve justice. Victims and their families deserve justice. When will this government finally work with Indigenous peoples and law enforcement towards Indigenous justice?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, we thank our colleague for that important question and obviously share her concern and the concern of all Canadians when we see these tragic outcomes. I've talked to the RCMP, the Commissioner, the leadership of the RCMP about this. I've had a chance to talk to Indigenous leaders and territorial premiers about this. We share our colleagues' concern about moving towards a circumstance where we can have more Indigenous police forces and include Indigenous communities in the important law enforcement that Canadians expect in their communities and that we want to do in partnership with them. And we'll continue to do that important work, Mr. Speaker, and think of the families of these victims at all times.
The honourable member for Spadina Fort York.
Mr. Speaker, Canada's border and immigration are key issues for the incoming Trump administration. It's no surprise the immigration minister was left out of the Prime Minister's mayor election.
We like him, man. I'd love to see him as a Conservative.
Have now placed our economy at risk. With IRGC agents hiding behind the refugee program to avoid deportation, can the public safety minister, who did make the trip and whose department finally got around to designating the IRGC as a terrorist that they are, share what he's doing to kick out every single terrorist from Canada? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister for Citizenship, Immigration and Refugees.
Again, Mr. Speaker, we see a member of the House constantly making things up. We are very, very concerned about any foreign agent working in Canada, whether it's as part of any purported terror. The enforcement agencies in our country work diligently to clamp down on these people, to arrest them, to bring them to justice, or to kick them out of the country. We'll continue to do so. Thank you.
Je voudrais signaler aux députés la présence et la...
I would like to highlight the presence of a former colleague, the Honourable Jean-Claude Damour, former Minister of Government Affairs.
Folks, you're not going to want to leave.
Minister.
They're going to be debating
affairs for the province.
What the hell is Cooper debating here? Cooper's going to be debating the SDTC scandal for a few minutes, and then they're going to be debating the confidence motion.
I see that there are 2 points of order which are going to be raised. The honourable member from Vancouver East.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm rising to add my perspective on the matter of privilege raised on Friday by my colleague, the member for London Frencha. Specifically, the opposition deputy House leader explicitly named me and put completely false information on the record regarding my conduct in the lobby as an attempt to deflect from the deliberate, premeditated plan to disrupt the voting proceedings in the House. And so I'm rising to state this, to correct the record and put on the record what had actually happened. Prior to the vote taking place, on my way to the washroom, I overheard the Conservative lobby staff instruct Conservative MPs to disrupt proceedings in the chamber once the NDP rose to vote. He then egged them on and said, quote, The NDP deserves it. I shook my head and made a comment under my breath and left the lobby.
What comment did you make?
Not only was there no intimidation, there was no heated exchange of words between me and that staffer. In other words, the Conservative staff is suggesting that the NDP deserves to have our House privilege violated in clear contravention of Section 16(1) of the Standing Orders. When the vote took place, sure enough, the Conservatives carry out their premeditated plan to deliberately violate the privilege of NDP members. During the vote, I was not able to hear if my vote was registered, and I did not know if, in fact, it had or not. I stood for some time watching and waited. After the vote, a number of MPs and staff had gathered, and I reiterated that the staffer in question had instructed Conservative MPs to disrupt the House, which he affirmed. I also raised this with the Conservative whip and asked if this amounted to bullying, to which he responded that he knew nothing about it. The question is, if he knew nothing about it, then who instructed the Conservative law?
Oh my God, man. He said, she said, blah, blah, blah,
Is
blah,
it the
blah.
leader of the official opposition? If not, did the staff act on their own? I understand what happens in the lobby is not subject to debate in the House, but the member from Megantic-Larab brought this up, and I need to defend myself and put the truth on the record. The member's fabrication does not end there. In his comment, he says that an NDP staffer had to, quote, physically take hold of me. Not only is this absolutely untrue, when I returned from the washroom and walked through the lobby, I was not manhandled by anyone. On the contrary,
What is a man?
I proactively informed what I had overheard to the NDP lobby staff, who was already aware at the time that the Conservatives intended to violate Standing Order 16(1) by disrupting the House when the NDP got up to vote. This was reported to the clerk, and so that the Speaker would be informed and aware. It is so deeply disturbing for the Conservatives to resort to fabricating such a story to malign me and the NDP hardworking staff. So, Mr. Speaker, not only are the members' comments completely untrue, but I think as you deliberate, you should be aware of the premeditation and intentional nature of the disruption of Section 16(1) of the Standing Orders brought on by the Conservative MPs on Thursday, Mr. Speaker. The truth needs to be told, and I hope that this information will assist you in that deliberation.
I didn't listen to a thing you said, Jenny, because I don't care what you have to say.
Vancouver East.
I have no retention of what she just said. None.
Point of order?
If you put a gun to my head and said, tell me in a summary what she just said, you might as well pull the trigger.
But it's not on the same topic, but I'll still go ahead with my point of order. One of your responsibilities is to maintain order in this House. I know it's not always easy, especially at this time. I know our friends at the NDP are very far away from you, but they're very near us, and they're often very noisy, and it's hard to hear interpretation, and it is also disruptive for us. So I hope that in future you'll be able to pay greater attention to what's happening in this corner of the House, because it's really hard for us.
Je remercie l'honorable député de La Prairie pour son intervention.
I'd like to thank the honourable member for his intervention. Third point of order.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I would like to reserve the right to come back to this question with a more comprehensive response, but I couldn't help but stand up and respond to a few of the erroneous points that the NDP member just raised. And I want to thank my colleague from the Bloc Québécois to point out that the NDP are often selective in their sanctimony about decorum in this place. They are often extremely noisy, heckle members when they have the floor, including during votes, Mr. Speaker. So they suddenly find their holier-than-thou-ness genes on this type of thing when they themselves are guilty of it often. With regards to the specific allegations, I can tell the NDP member that there are witnesses that saw everything that our colleagues have pointed out, including we have videotape of the erratic and unhinged behavior that the NDP members exhibited when they marched up to the Speaker's chair. She wants to talk about decorum. Yeah. Marching up to the Speaker's chair, hurling insults at the Speaker after the House had already been adjourned, to the point where they did have to be taken aback because they were violating the space of members of our side who mostly were seated and calm and collected. And I don't know what happened to cause such erratic and unhinged behavior in the part of the NDP. I won't speculate to that, but I will be coming back with a more substantive response, including the eyewitness testimony of members who were in the lobby who heard that member hurl abuse and profane and vulgar language at a staffer. So an elected MP yelling insults and using profane language against a staffer would also rise to the level of unparliamentary behavior. As she pointed out, it happened in the lobby, not in the chamber. But I would just point out that it's your job, Mr. Speaker, to enforce decorum during votes and during speeches, which you did that night. You made a judgment call on aspects of decorum that evening. And other than that, I believe that's where the matter should rest. And it was only after the NDP started making false and defamatory accusations, which I dare say they would never repeat outside the chamber, that we were forced to show Canadians the actual truth about what happened that evening, which consisted of NDP members of Parliament completely losing their cool, coming over in an aggressive and hostile manner, hurling abuse and yelling at members who were seated and calm and collected. That is the true story about what happened that night, and we will absolutely correct the record.
He's just a fucking shithead. He's like smiling while he's saying it.
That the honourable member from
I love it.
Centre is rising on, Niagara Falls rather, is rising on the same point of order. If I could ask the honourable member to be brief.
And I take no pleasure in standing here, and I'm just building on what our House Leader would have to say in the report that he will be coming back with on further comments. I was one of those witnesses that evening in the lobby, and I want to correct or bring a little clarification to what the member opposite said. Unfortunately, she used her position of power to bully a staffer and used inappropriate language when dealing with that one staffer. I immediately let the whip's office and our House Leader's office know, and it should not stand. You do not treat the people that serve us here in this House in that type of manner. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I hope to come back to the House as soon as possible after we've heard the interventions, which some have indicated that they're going to be coming back to the House before the Speaker makes some observations. I wish to inform the House that the volume of earpieces will now be reset.
All right, folks, this is where you got to stay. This is where you got to stay. They're going to be debating the SDTC.
Business, tabling of documents.
You're
introduction of government bills.
Probably going to hear Cooper talk.
Reports from interparliamentary delegations. Presenting reports from...
And then they should be debating the motion of non-confidence. Yeah, see, Cooper's up. Cooper's after.
Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to present in both official languages the 22nd report of the Standing Committee on Health about Bill C-368, an act to amend the Food and Drugs Act, Natural Health Products.
Has studied the bill and has decided to report the bill back to the House with amendments. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member, presenting reports from committees. The honourable member.
There you go. SDTC stuff.
Member from West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country.
No, it's not Cooper yet.
I have the honor.
They keep blue balling them.
Official languages, the 19th report of the Standing Committee on Indigenous and Northern Affairs in relation to Bill C-61, an act respecting water, source water, drinking water, wastewater, and related infrastructure on First Nation lands. The committee has studied the bill and has decided to report the bill back to the House with amendments.
Now Cooper stands up again. You can see him in the top right.
Presenting reports from committees. The honourable member from St. Albert, Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 104 and 114, I have the honour to present in both official languages the 72nd report of the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs entitled Pilot Project to Include Inuit Languages on Federal Election Ballots in Nunavut.
I thank the honourable member. Introduction of private members' bills. Ms. Zerillo, seconded by Ms. Barron, moves for leave to introduce a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Canada Disability Benefit Act. This motion is deemed adopted. The honourable member for Port Moody Coquitlam.
Today, I am introducing a bill to protect the Canada.
This will go by in a couple minutes. Don't worry.
Who will receive it from clawbacks. Thank you to the member of Nanaimo Ladysmith for seconding it and for the work that she does in her community for persons with disabilities. People with disabilities living in poverty experience the cruelty of clawbacks firsthand, because whenever they get the slightest increase in income, their critical government benefits are reduced. The skimming of benefits that they are entitled to pushes them farther behind. The era of perpetuating poverty through Liberal and Conservatives before them, cruel and callous clawbacks, has to end. And the negative impacts go farther than just bad economic policy. It's bad social policy too. People with disabilities are prevented from having a live-in relationship, marrying, leaving an abusive relationship, or even taking on roommates, because if they do, they risk losing their critical benefits. With my bill, which is already with my bill in relation to the Canada Disability Benefit, which is already woefully inadequate, the government can amend and modernize this new era of disability benefits that empowers people instead of punishing them. In closing, I raise my hands to the disability community and countless advocates who have continued to raise the issue. And again, I call on the government to do what is right. Adopt this bill, fix this historic wrong, and make sure that people with disabilities can live the life they choose.
Trudeau's got the biggest disability.
Seconded by Ms. Barron, moves that the bill be now read a first time and be printed. This motion is deemed adopted.
First reading of this bill, première lecture de ce projet de loi.
When shall this bill be read a second time? At the next sitting of the House. First reading of Senate public bills. Motions. Mr. Zimmer, seconded by Mr. Melillo, moves that the 18th report of the Standing Committee on Indigenous and Northern Affairs presented on Monday, November 25, 2024 be concurred in. Debate. The honourable member from Prince George Peace River, Northern Rockies.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it's my honour to stand here today. I will be sharing my time with the member from Halliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock. So I got that right? Yay. And the report states we want to the Standing Committee on Indigenous Northern Affairs wants to embark on a study to see the appearance of the Member of Parliament for Edmonton Centre, pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Thursday, November 21st, 2024.
Okay.
Your committee has agreed.
All right, folks, here's what's going to happen. Here's what's happening. I've got the itinerary pulled up. They're doing a couple of things before they get to, I don't have it pulled up on my screen. I don't have it pulled up on my screen, but I've got it on my phone here. So I've got the itinerary of what they're doing on my phone, okay? So there's a checklist of things that they got to do. They're going to be doing this for 20, 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes. I'm going to have it pulled up, and I'm going to make sure that when they actually get to the debate of the motion of non-confidence, that we're watching it in real time. So we're going to keep the stream going. Okay, so we're not going to miss anything right now. We're just missing some little back and forth routine proceeding shit. You don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. I have a whole bunch of other content that's ready to go. So we're going to take a 2-minute break. If you want to leave the stream and come back in 30 minutes, hey, no one's holding you hostage, right? Feel free to do that. But if you want to stick around and catch up on a whole bunch of relevant news that happened today here in Canada, and then we're going to watch the debate on the motion of non-confidence, then that's also another plan. So I'd like to encourage everyone to stick around for the entire thing, because you will not be bored. I guarantee you that. But just what's happening in Parliament, it's going to be a little bit more time. Okay, so we're gonna tune in live when it happens, but we're gonna do some other stuff in the meantime. So I got to take a leak. We're gonna watch. We're gonna watch a little clip here that I got pulled up. Okay, a little intermission clip. So I'll see you guys in a couple of minutes.
Champion who can't even speak by his own MPs will remember.
Speaker, they tell me that this isn't an individual crime. This is backed by people who are organized criminals. How do we deal with that? Money laundering. When he's asking me to read the law, I'd ask him to
the stupidest thing, bro.
Measure to deal with money laundering that you're voting against.
The guy who broke into your nan's car, that's organized crime.
Red Deer Lacombe visited school kids to say carbon dioxide with plant food. Mr. Speaker, this...
Oh my gosh. Good job. We're so proud of you. All the seals are clapping. Come on, Trudeau left.
Right, it is a joke. An April Fool's joke. And the joke is on Canadian taxpayers, especially Nova Scotians, who will have to pay $1,500 in higher carbon taxes after that hike goes ahead.
Top of mind for people from coast to coast to coast. It's shameful. But the fact of the matter is, he doesn't have anything to say about that because he refuses to put forward any real plan to fight against climate change, and he does nothing but fight against our plan to fight climate change. If he has a better plan, let him say it, because we've been waiting a long time for it. But he has no plan to fight climate change.
Trudeau's going to explode.
Yes, while Canada is burning.
And I think she may want to withdraw it. The word was F-A-R-T.
All righty, everybody. Wow. All right. This is, we're getting into the mud now. So we got a little bit of time before they get into the debate of the motion of non-confidence. But in the meantime, I've got some stuff ready. All right. This is crazy. We're going through the news cycle now. This is going to be bananas. I don't know if you guys are actually ready for this, but buckle up. Because this is some of this shit is unbelievable. Starting things off with this crazy announcement here that a northwestern Ontario town has been fined $10,000 for refusing to celebrate Pride Month. Yeah, that's a real thing, apparently. So when you look into it, this is brought to you by Winnipeg CTV News. Kind of crazy that it wasn't on like the big platform CTV News, but nonetheless, here we go. An Ontario town and its mayor and the mayor have been fined a total of $15,000 for refusing to celebrate Pride Month. In a decision from November 20th, the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario ordered the town of Emo Town to pay $10,000 and the mayor to pay $5,000 to Borderland Pride for violating the Human Rights Code and discrimination and discriminating against the organization. The tribunal, the cult, has also ordered the town's mayor to complete human rights training. This is real, folks. This is real. If you don't support the LGBTQSI plus community, don't ever mix up those letters either. It's not the ABCDEFG. It's the LGBTQSLA plus. LGBTQSLA plus. If you don't support them, if you don't raise the flag, you're going to be fined. That's the world that we're living in. That's Canada. That's real. That's real. A mayor got fined $5,000 and the town got fined $10,000. That's Canada. That doesn't make any fucking sense, if you ask me. And speaking of not making any sense, Joe Biden. Joe Biden. All right. Reverses his promise and pardons his son, Hunter, of federal gun and tax crimes. He said he wouldn't do it. And now here we are. And he's doing it. Let's take a look.
Breaking news out of Washington this hour. U.S. President Joe Biden has pardoned his son Hunter, who was convicted earlier this year on federal gun and tax crimes. In a statement, the president said he believed his son's conviction was a miscarriage of justice and was infected by politics, writing in part, "No reasonable person who looks at the facts of Hunter's case can reach any other conclusion, that Hunter was singled out only because he is my son, and that is wrong." Now, previously, the president had said that he had no intention of pardoning his son. Hunter Biden was scheduled to be sentenced this month.
And there you go. And Joe Biden pulls a Sleepy Joe and says, you know what? We're going to reverse the decision. I know what I said, but I'm going against it now. And speaking of America, Canada and America relations are kind of iffy right now with the whole threats, of the 25% tariffs across the board that Trump did on Canada. So Canada just went behind America's back and signed a new trade agreement with Indonesia. So even though Justin Trudeau jumped on the plane and jet-setted carbon emission free, right? I don't know what kind of technology he has in that plane, but he sure wouldn't be polluting the planet, right? After how much of an advocate he is. That's a big no-no. He's gone behind America's back, and we signed, Canada signed, Trudeau signed, whomever, a new trade agreement with Indonesia. So I'm not saying that trade is going to be kaputs with America, but kind of weird to go and just do this amid tensions with America. Let's take a look.
Canada's Trade Minister, Mary Ng, has announced a new trade agreement with Indonesia that she says will foster bilateral trade between the two countries. The agreement was signed today in Jakarta and has been in the works for 3 years. Canada and Indonesia are seeking to strengthen economic ties by bringing down tariffs, enhancing supply chain access, and driving growth in several business sectors. It comes as countries across the world contemplate the impact Donald Trump's upcoming takeover could have on trade agreements between their countries and the United States.
Canada trades $145 million a day with the United States. And in all of the businesses that I have talked to, both in Canada, but also Canadian businesses that are doing business in the United States, and American businesses that do business with Canada.
Am I not sharing my screen? You're looking at me? Looking at the video? Are you kidding me? For a minute we've been doing that? What the fuck is going on? All right. Let's do that again, huh? Come on. Is this my first day? Y'all are just watching me watching the news and listening to it? And no one said nothing? Are you kidding me? Is that it? Are we going to start doing that? Am I just going to sit here and put my feet up? I'm just going to kick my feet up and have a scotch, and you're going to listen to the news, but you're not going to watch it. You're going to watch me watching it, and you're just going to see, no. That's all you're going to see now. Come on, man. Come on, this is team effort. Come on. Let's try this again.
Canada's Trade Minister, Mary Ng, has announced a new trade agreement with Indonesia.
Okay, that one's on purpose. Let's try it again. That one's on purpose.
Canada's Trade Minister, Mary Ng, has announced a new trade agreement with Indonesia that she says will foster bilateral trade between the two countries. The agreement was signed today in Jakarta and has been in the works for 3 years. Canada and Indonesia are seeking to strengthen economic ties by bringing down tariffs, enhancing supply chain access, and driving growth in several business sectors. It comes as countries across the world contemplate the impact Donald Trump's upcoming takeover could have on trade agreements between their countries and the United States.
Canada trades $145 million a day with the United States. And in all of the businesses that I have talked to, both in Canada, but also Canadian businesses that are doing business in the United States, and American businesses that do business with Canada, tariffs raises costs. It raises costs for their consumers and for those businesses. So businesses, businesses will be impacted. The good news here is that Canada and Indonesia, in the negotiating of this trade agreement, means that we are creating a predictability of our trading relationship, bringing down tariffs, and also creating that environment that really enables companies to want to grow into this market.
There you go. There you go. My bad, folks. The first one was an oopsie, oops me. The second one, that was pretty funny. That was pretty funny. Did that one on purpose. All right. Now let's take a look here at Pierre Poilievre, who slams Trudeau with Trump and says it's a sign of weakness. It was a sign of weakness that Justin Trudeau got on his plane last second and went to see Trump. Now, hey, I don't even know. I mean, I'm assuming you don't like Trudeau if you're watching this video. Okay. And it's not a pissing contest. I'm not going to sit here and say this person hates Trudeau more than that person. I hate Trudeau more than the next person. No, there's room for everybody. We all dislike and hate Justin Trudeau with a burning passion, likely. Now, that being said, I don't know how I feel. It's going to be an unpopular opinion. I don't know how I feel about Justin Trudeau jumping on his jet last minute, unannounced, and going to Mar-a-Lago. Part of me wants to think that that was a good move, just for the betterment of the country, not for Justin Trudeau, but for actually just the greater good of Canada, to go and try to solve this immediately with the guy who's making these threats, right? But the other part is like, God, it's Trudeau. It's hard for him to say or do anything, and for, not the reaction to be, that guy sucks. That guy sucks. And so I'm kind of split between a rock and a hard place, because I want to say that was great initiative. I don't like the guy. I don't like what he says. I don't like what he does, but that was good initiative. On the other side, is that just me shitting on Trudeau for the sake of shitting on him? Chances are yes, absolutely. Literally anything Justin Trudeau does is horrible. If he comes out and says tomorrow, we're going to axe the tax, that's great. That's good, right? That's what Pierre is doing. Like fully, not a 60-day pause, but fully axing the tax. But then it's like, okay, why now? Why haven't you done it in 9 years? Like, you started the taxes. So like, that's the thing about Trudeau, is even though some things are kind of good, like cutting back on immigration, he also caused the problem. He also caused the problem with the border, the drugs, the guns, blah, 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 blah. So even though he's rushing to go and stop Trump from putting on the 25% taxes on Canada, the tariffs, he's also the one that caused the problem. So how much props can you give somebody like that? That's kind of where I'm stuck, right? But anyways, let's take a look here at this video, because Poilievre ain't too happy.
The question about the meeting, look, I just felt, while I'm a critic of Mr. Trudeau's, I did feel badly that he went in with such a position of weakness. Normally when a prime minister goes to the United States to meet a president, they're looking to make gains. What gains did we hear from Mr. Trudeau? None. He's just trying to limit losses. Did he come back saying we're going to get an exemption to Buy America, like Harper achieved? Bush? No. Buy America is still in place. Did he say we're going to get an end to the softwood lumber tariffs, like Prime Minister Harper got from President Bush? No. Not only are they still in place, Biden just doubled them. All Justin Trudeau offers is minimizing losses. Now, this is the consequence of having a weak prime minister who's lost control of our borders, lost control of immigration, lost control of crime and drugs, and lost control of our economy. And Canadians are paying a dreadful price for everything that Justin Trudeau has broken. And we need a strong Prime Minister who has the brains and backbone to put Canada first and to fight for our workers and our security.
And I mean, that's something that I fully agree with, that Justin Trudeau's plan, his prime ministerial, tenure has been, okay, we're doing horrible. Let's try to minimize how horrible we're doing instead of reversing it and doing great and thriving. We're in a deficit. We've been in a deficit. Trudeau's put us in a deficit, but instead of us being in $1 trillion deficit, we're in like a $500 billion. So it's like, well, it could be worse. It's only half as bad as it could be. Like, no, dude, you're the guy that's supposed to steer the ship and take us out of the gutter, and you're not doing it. And so that's why Justin Trudeau is hated by Canadians, by politicians, by people around the world, because he's ruining this beautiful country. A lot of people, a lot of liberals and NDP supporters, they think Canada's too big to fall. It's too big. There's no way Canada will ever be a third world country. We border America. We have banks. We're civilized. We drive cars. We pay taxes. No way we're ever going to go bust. Yeah, I mean, a lot of empires also thought the same thing. And you can only be on top for so long before something happens, before greed and corruption start to consume. And that's what's happening with Canada and America. But who cares about America just right now? In this instance, with Canada, we've got people, politicians, federal MPs that are pretending to be Indigenous to get free government money. Like, give me a break. This is nuts. Absolutely nuts. Now we're going to take a look here at Pierre Poilievre, who is demanding more action at the border, because this is a real problem here. You have potentially 5, 10, 15, 20 million people that are going to try to flee to Canada. And there's also 3 million people next year that got to get out of Canada because their papers have expired. It's not very good. Let's see what Pierre has to say.
In Ottawa this morning, the Conservative Party is demanding tougher action on borders and immigration, as this comes after the surprise meeting between Prime Minister Trudeau and U.S. President-elect Donald Trump late last week down in Mar-a-Lago.
CTV's Colton Prale joins us live now with more on this. Good morning, Colton.
Good morning. This was a pretty strong call from Pierre Poilievre that we heard on Sunday, specifically around the borders, calling for more forces to be deployed there to deputize provincial police. Really, this has become such an increasing part of focus for the premiers, for the Conservative leader, and for the Prime Minister under these threats of the 25% tariffs. And what was interesting is what we learned from this dinner that took place on Friday night at Mar-a-Lago. The sources that we have are telling us that the understanding, at least in Ottawa and in the Prime Minister's office, is that there are no assurances that these tariffs can be avoided. And so the goalposts are moving from trying to explain the situation and how these tariffs could negatively impact Americans and Canadians, the difference between the U.S. border versus in the north versus the south, and how the problem when it comes to drug trafficking or illegal migrant crossings in Canada is significantly lower than the southern border through Mexico. The goalposts are changing from conversations like that to, well, then how do you move forward? If these tariffs are coming no matter what, and there's an understanding that the messages that we've been relaying about the impacts and the lack of severity of the issue has been understood and well received, and the tariffs are still coming, what comes next? What are the next steps? And that's where this conversation and this dinner really comes into play, because the message is that those tariffs are unavoidable, but that after those tariffs are in place, because they're going to be used by Trump and his administration in an attempt to balance the budget, there will be side deals, country by country, where exemptions will be made. And so can Canada be among the first countries to see one of those side deals? How long will you have to deal with these tariffs if they do come, rather than can they be avoided? And so the work when it comes to the border will be a huge part of that. One of the things we heard from this dinner was that Trump is specifically looking for really a boots on the ground on-the-ground type situation when it comes to protecting the border. He wants to see manned aircraft. He wants to see more patrol officers. We know that the federal government has promised things like helicopters and drones to enhance security, talked about redeploying some police officers to these areas. It's certainly a start, but we'll see how they respond and how.
I do not think that Canada has the ability to do something like that. I really don't. I wish we did. I'm very pro doing those things, but Canada, for instance, we've been failing to hit our minimum GDP contribution limit, right? Or the minimum amount, 2% towards the defense budget. And we keep failing to do that. We're left vulnerable. We're one of the weakest countries in the entire world, right? And the only reason Canada hasn't yet been invaded is because we border America. But Trump even said, if you haven't paid the bills, nothing I can do. And so, I mean, come on, like, we don't just need to have aircrafts patrolling our borders, but we also need to increase our defense spending. We need to increase that budget. And unfortunately, this is going to take a massive toll on a bunch of these social programs that we just can't afford right now. Sorry. I'm sorry that 200,000 kids aren't able to be fed at home and they have to rely on government assistance. That sucks, but the government should be trying to make life cheaper for parents so they can feed their kids at home. So we're not spending billions of dollars on 200,000 kids being fed. That, first of all, that's not a lot of kids for the amount of money that's going into the program. So that's a complete failure by quite literal definition. And I just don't know if Justin Trudeau, the Liberals, have what it takes to be able to pull this off. And I mean, Trump can literally, in the snap of his fingers, on January 20th, when he's sworn in, he can literally cause a recession in Canada if these tariffs go on.
How they change their approach after this dinner, because certainly the impetus to try to resolve these perceived problems is going to be significant.
So, Colton, that's the situation in terms of the incoming Trump presidency, which we can now say will be happening next month. But in terms of Ottawa and Parliament, I mean, there's been gridlock, you know, in terms of getting anything done, with the exception of the GST cut, that 2-month sort of holiday right now. But is there any chance the opposition could perhaps force an election before they rise for the holidays, maybe sometime around December 17th?
Yeah, so because we saw that exemption made for the GST in between the privilege debates, there's a little hope that we could see similar moves from the Speaker. There's also still the potential that the Liberals could get support for a closure motion that would end some of these privilege debates. But it is expected that two things will happen. One, that we'll hear from the Speaker on when the opposition days will happen. We could see progress on that as early as this morning. The second is that we're likely to see a vote on the supplementary estimates, just making sure the Parliament is getting the money from its coffers so that it can actually spend on government programs and ensure that the country continues to run in the manner that we expect it to. That is likely going to happen at some point this week. And if we do see some progress on that opposition motion, or opposition days, I should say, we know the Conservatives plan to bring forth an opposition motion, which will be a confidence vote. And interestingly, will be made up entirely of words that Jagmeet Singh has used and said publicly. And they're going to try to paint him into a corner and force him to stand by things that he has previously said in an attempt to vote non-confidence in the government. Now, whether the NDP will actually do that remains to be seen. Probably not. But certainly they are targeting Jagmeet Singh whenever this next opposition day happens.
Right. So this is something that's been in the works for a while. And this is the 4, 5, 6, 7D, 8D chess, however far you want to take it, that Pierre Poilievre is playing, right? It's phenomenal because Jagmeet Singh has literally used very certain words to support the GST tax break for Canadians. No taxes, well, no GST tax specifically for 60 days. So Pierre Poilievre took those words and said, awesome, that's phenomenal. I support tax breaks as well. Let's vote for a full tax break. All you got to do is vote in favor of the vote of non-confidence, right? And so he's using his own words against him, which is, I mean, the best way to just show pure hypocrisy. And there is no bigger hypocrite in Canadian politics than Jagmeet Singh. I hate to admit it, but I think the literal worst politician in Canada is Jagmeet Singh. Yes, Trudeau is in charge. Yes, Trudeau is like raw dogging us from the back. No consent. It's been horrible. But Jagmeet Singh, he's also holding us hostage, 41 plus million Canadians, to a government that nobody voted for. So he's quite literally the worst person in Canada. But hey, that's my opinion. I'd love to know your guys's. Now we're going to take a look here at, speaking of the borders, we heard what Pierre Poilievre had to say. Now let's take a look at what the Liberal government has to say. Specifically, the Chihuahua, the Liberal Chihuahua. Here we go.
Hi, Minister.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for making the time for the conversation. I appreciate it.
It's always nice.
I want to start off and ask you whether it is your gut feeling that Donald Trump actually wants to apply these tariffs or he's using it as a negotiating tactic.
Listen, if I look back, I mean, I always say you have to take what President Trump is saying seriously. That would be the first thing. But you also need to recognize...
Is it just me, or he sounds a little feminine? Is the voice a little higher pitched? Is it just me? Or am I? Do they not have like proper bass? Not in his voice, but even in the microphone? Hello, Vashi. Hello, Vashi. Is my audio messed up, man? Can someone clarify the chat? That's kind of weird.
That he is fairly consistent in trying to create leverage.
He's fairly consistent?
In conversations or in negotiation. And that's why I think that...
Well, he's sitting like a woman, so that makes sense.
He said when we saw that on social media, the two things that he focused on.
The two things?
Two things that we can work together on. First of all, when you say about protecting the border, obviously we want to protect the border. Secondly, when you're talking about...
I can't help it. I can't help it. I am picturing him with a wig over his head, and just long hair and then high heels or something, because we know the Liberals, they wear the high heels and they walk around like a committee meeting boardroom or something like that. Dude, I can't get it. I don't understand the lack of testosterone within the Liberals. Look, you don't have to be an axe swinging redneck with a pickup truck and that cuts wood and starts fires. You don't have to be that to be a politician. I get it, but what is on with this? What's going on with this here? Come on, Vashi, please listen to me. That part I don't understand. This is Canada.
But interdicting the entry in fentanyl in Canada, this isn't our interest. Obviously, we want that as well. So I think on these two topics, and you've seen our response and say, yeah, we can put more detachments of our CMPs on the border. Premiers have said they can augment these forces. We can work with DEA in the United States and drug interdiction. So I think that about these issues, we're going to be, it's in our mutual interest to protect the border and interdict fentanyl. And I think then we can somehow separate that from trade, because that is a totally different issue. So I'd say at least the two things that he mentioned is two things that we can work together on.
To be blunt, though, why weren't you already working on those two things? And not to insinuate that you're not doing anything, but I think we have.
Vashi's voice has a bigger
problem at the border, particularly where illegal.
Her voice sounds not manlier. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not. She shouldn't sound like a man, but she has a deeper voice than the Chihuahua. Unless my audio's messed up. I don't know, but I feel like my audio's not messed up.
Migration is concerned, has significantly increased over the last year. If you knew there was a possibility that President Trump could be in office, and you knew that the border was crucial to him, as he signaled during the campaign, why wasn't your government doing more in advance to better position us for this possible threat?
Yeah, I would challenge a bit on that.
Okay. Am I losing it? Okay, we got to go back. We got to listen to just the past few seconds of Vashi. I want everyone to close their eyes and listen to the transition here.
Crucial to him, as he signaled during the campaign. Why wasn't your government doing more in advance to better position us for this possible threat?
Yeah, I would challenge.
I wish I challenge this.
Border and trade would be two things that would be the focus of President Trump. And I would say we've been preparing with the authorities for months now, with different scenarios, different planning, having the contingency in places. But I would say, I think, if I reflect back on his statement, I think there was a bit of there's a huge difference between the northern border and the southern border. I mean, you can't even compare. The ratio sometimes is 1 to 10, 1 to 1,000. When you're talking about, for example, people try to cross the border illegally, you can even compare that to Mexico. Same thing when it comes to fentanyl. So maybe, to your point, we may need to augment and be very visible about that. But I would challenge that we didn't do the work to prepare all that. We have all these scenarios planning. We have the force ready. We have the equipment ready. But some of his assertions do not match the reality on the ground, because we get a report, as part of the Canada-U.S. committee, we get intelligence regularly. We monitor that like hawks in terms of what's the interdiction, what are the points. And you know what? I can say that you've seen a surge since the election on this. So therefore, what we're saying, we're more than ready to deploy. You've seen, I think, Minister LeBlanc saying that with assets and people and technology. But I think it's going to be for us as well to demonstrate to the president that obviously we take that as seriously as he does. Protecting our border is in Canada's best interest.
But my guess is he has, and pardon the interrupt, my guess is, based on the threat he's making, that he does not have the impression that you do. And to put the facts on the table, you're absolutely right. There is hardly any comparison between what's happening in our border and Mexico. If I were to put the data to it, it's close to 24,000 in the last year through illegal migration compared to 1.5 million. So, however, that 24,000 signifies a doubling of the year before. So though the problem relative to Mexico is very small, it still has increased enough to raise enough attention with President Trump that he puts the same treatment on both our countries. And my challenge to you and your government is, how could you not see that coming?
Well, I would also be careful about the
I would also be careful. Look, I'm not saying that this is per se the benchmark for masculinity and femininity, but if I was stranded on the side of the road and I broke my arms, okay? I broke my arms. For some reason, I'm driving my truck and I broke my arms. They're useless. I got no hands. And a car pulls up and it's got the Chihuahua and Vashi, and they both get out. Hey, are you okay? Say, no, my arm's broke, man, and I got a flat tire. I don't know what to do. Can someone help me? And the Chihuahua comes over and says, hey, do you need a hand? I can change your tire for you. I would say, what about her? Can she do it? What's her name? Hi, I'm Vashi. Yeah, Vashi, can you change the tire for me? My hands are broken, and I don't want the Chihuahua to change the tire. Thank you. That's how that would go. Take that however you would like, but that's how that would go.
The way they account for what they call encounter, you have to dig into that to really see.
I have.
To really
and
see.
To be fair, my producer sitting to the side actually did it.
Well,
and he actually contacted them, got the data. It's over 23,000, which signifies a doubling in between legal points of action.
I think what they're counting, we may have a discussion on that. That's all I can say, because I know that the CBSA is in touch with their counterpart in the United States, and the way they're counting, I think there's some issues. But to your point, perception is what matters. We have the data, we work with the authorities, but my point is that fundamentally, we are prepared. That I would challenge. Now, you say you may need to be more visible so that someone in Washington or in Mar-a-Lago looking at that and say, Canada gets it. We totally get it, because we, as you know, Vashi, we wanted to protect our border first when we were looking at what kind of scenarios there would be in the United States. So we knew we needed to do that, and I would say all the work has been done. And when it comes to fentanyl, as you know, it's the same thing with the border. The magnitude is completely different, and so I would say let's work together. That if there's one thing that I would say, if I had President Trump, if you were President Trump, I'd say, Mr. President, we have the same interest. We want to protect our border. We want to interdict fentanyl. Let's work on that together, like we have always done. Because, by the way, you can look at the numbers, you can dispute some numbers, but the point is that we're going to show it. We're going to be very visible. You heard from my colleagues. They say, we have all the assets on the border. We have the technology. So we're going to be very visible so that it's seen that not only we've done the work, but that we can deploy quickly.
And how soon do you anticipate you will be able to attach specifics to that? Because premiers like Ontario Premier Doug Ford criticized your government going into that meeting with the Prime Minister for being slow to act, for being caught on their back foot. That was his impression. Yes, you're right. Minister LeBlanc emerged from that meeting and said, we can deploy new resources there. There have not been any specifics attached to that word new. How soon will your government present a specific plan, not just to President Trump, but to Canadians about what more you're going to do on the border?
But that's what matters is to Canadians. I would say two things. I think some of the comments from the premiers before the meeting, and as you saw them coming out of the meeting, I think they were reassured. I think
sort of, but they're waiting for the plan.
Yeah, no, but
they are more reassured than when they went in.
Yeah,
but they want the plan.
Well, because they realize we've done the work. Now, when you say it's just about deploying assets, what matters is that we have the contingency plan, we have the detachment, we have all that lined up. But my point is that we are ready to deploy, and we're ready to deploy when you see a surge, when you see an issue. You see what I mean? You can have you can have all the assets you want, but you deploy them when you see a specific issue, and that's been part of the discussion with our friends down south, and say, we are going to do our part. You also have to do your part on your side of the border. And for example, if I look at fentanyl, our folks work with the DEA all the time. I would say to them, if I had the director of the DEA, well, if you see something, say something, because we are very much aligned with you in trying to interdict that. Because the problem is interdicting fentanyl and chemicals that are coming from China into North America. That is the issue. It's not Canada.
It's a fair question.
That's the issue.
Yeah, I think it's a fair question to their
chemicals from China in North America.
Yeah, their law enforcement as well. It's very fair. But my question was, how soon are you going to deliver the Canadian plan?
I think you will see that deployed very quickly, but also very methodically. Because, like I said, when you hear President Trump, you have to take that seriously, but also methodically. You cannot, and the Prime Minister is cannot start panicking every time they're going to be a comments or a statement or even a social media post. We have been there. This is the team. I would say, trust me, we've been there before. We've been in that movie. I think
he wants to say trust me, but we don't.
This is episode 1.
He knows we don't trust him.
We've seen that, and we've been there at the time, so we know how to address these issues and to take, like you said, there's some perception on the numbers. We need to deal with that. We need to put the assets on the border, and then we need to talk about the things that we can do together.
And just very quickly, I have time just for one more question. The other thing that the premiers have conveyed to us that was that stuck out to them during that meeting was that they are unanimous in asking the Prime Minister and your government to accelerate the timeline for meeting 2% of defense spending. Will your government do that?
We certainly have a plan, and it's, again, in Canada's best interest. But I'm so glad you're asking that question, because one of the things I've been talking to my American friends, when I was still co-chair of this Canada-U.S. engagement, the three things we've always been talking with our American friends, the first one is security. Security of the North, the Arctic, and the border. In fact, way before that, social media. Supply chain resiliency. And you're talking about critical minerals, and I'll come to defense. And then you're talking about a growth agenda. The one thing I would say is that when you're looking at defense procurement, and I was just talking to NATO, which was in Montreal, as you know, yes, a week ago. You have to look not only at the numbers, but what's happening also with respect to the manufacturing capabilities. We are talking with our American friends, we're talking with Canadian friends, but we have huge programs that are coming that will upgrade our forces, whether you talk about submarines, whether you're talking about other defense systems. You've seen the destroyers that we're building. And I would say to our American friends and NATO allies, there's going to be massive spending to upgrade a number of equipment, and that's going to benefit companies and workers on both sides of the border. Sure. Because when they challenge me on that, I say, be careful about that, because if you see the level of contracts that are coming up that are going to benefit both Canadian industry, American industry, I think when you talk behind that, I would say behind closed door, you hear different things, because the real challenge we have today, Vashi, is not the spending, is the manufacturing capabilities in NATO countries.
I think two things can be true. Yes, the capacity is an issue.
The capacity is what I'm dealing with, because you may want to invest, but you need to be able to build.
But you're not even aiming to do that. That's the point, I think, that, and I can tell you it has been conveyed through our program on multiple instances from multiple high-ranking members of Congress, of the Senate,
Sure.
of U.S. ambassadors to NATO, and even the incoming president himself has said it, right? I get it that the capacity is an issue, but the capacity is an issue right around the world right now. Our allies, by and large, in NATO are still able to meet the pledge that they agreed to more than a decade ago. We're just saying in the abstract we'll get there in 2032. My question was, is your government prepared to do what the premiers are asking and accelerate that timeline?
Well, we're looking at that. But say pledge is something, but being able to deploy that capital, that's what I'm saying, because I do work with our NATO allies. I was talking, I was just recently with the NATO procurement folks in Europe and some of the military. We went to the Defense Intelligence, the Defense Innovation Unit in Palo Alto. I will tell you, Vashi, on one end, I agree with you. You need to have a target and you have to have a timeline to reach that. The real issue we have as NATO partners and also American friends is the manufacturing capacity and capabilities. I'll give you an example why in this discussion.
But is that an excuse not to set a target?
No, it's not an excuse. No, I'm saying you need to do both. But even if you were to put a lot more today in the window, I can tell you if you look at the manufacturing capabilities, that's the real challenge. That's what I've been working. I'll give you an example. You're talking about titanium. We invested about $1 billion with Rio Tinto to upgrade that because now titanium in the North American defense supply chain is not necessarily coming from a friendly country. We're going to be the largest supplier of titanium for both our defense industry, the U.S. industry, and NATO. That is significant. I can tell you in closed doors, when I mentioned titanium, when I mentioned cobalt, when I mentioned the critical minerals to do the microchip that are going to be needed for defense systems, when you talk beyond, the closed door, people realize that. Because that is also Canada's contribution. We're the only NATO country which has all the critical minerals to support the defense industry. And we've been making a lot of investments.
You don't do anything, though.
Oftentimes saying to colleagues, I appreciate what you're saying there, but don't underestimate the work we've been doing to make sure that you have to look at the full value chain from downstream to upstream. And we've been a key partner in that. And I would tell you, titanium, just interview folks at National Security in the U.S., they tell you, Minister, we appreciate what you've been doing there because we need to be resilient in North America.
I think I would think they would say that, but they've also been telling us they'd like you to speed up the timeline. I take your point. Let's see if you do.
but in a sense, we've been very vocal about what we want to achieve on the target, and I think Minister Blair, the Prime Minister, has been very clear.
They have not been clear, with all due respect. Minister Blair has said he's open to accelerating it. The Prime Minister has said we have a plan, and it's going to stay the way it is. That's not the same.
But at the same time that you've heard those statements, I would say we've been working to augment our manufacturing capabilities and helping our NATO allies to meet that commitment, because you can focus on the target. I'm focusing on building the stuff that our men and women in uniform will need. And I think, we get a lot of recognition for that. I know it's not that public because a lot of that is classified. But I would say when you're talking to people who need to build these things, the shipyards, you're talking about the critical minerals, you're talking titanium is a great example. You need that in order to repair jets on aircraft carriers. Very significant. Straight on the national security ally. They say, thanks, Canada, that you're doing that, because you know what? There's no other NATO allies who can provide that. So we have niche capabilities, niche supply chain that are very critical. And I think that's what I'm putting forward when I talk to my NATO allies, and they appreciate the contribution of Canada.
Okay, I have to leave it on that note. I've taken enough of your time, Minister. I appreciate it as always. Thank you.
The thing about a lot of the investments that Canada's doing is that we're investing in things, but in other parts of the world. Like we're investing in nuclear energy, which is kind of great. I'm super pro that. I think that's phenomenal. It's not only clean, it checks that box, but it's extremely efficient and extremely powerful. And I think at some point we're going to be using nuclear power in, rocket engines to go and do some space exploration. That's the future. That's wicked. And then there's also a bunch of companies in America that are doing these nuclear reactors, but they're small, the size of a shipping container, and they can power entire office buildings or even small little communities. That is sweet. But Canada's investment in that is not here in this country. We're investing in it in the Indo-Pacific region and stuff like that. So it's just kind of weird. Even our oil and gas, Canada's oil and gas, we buy dirty Saudi oil. And we're sitting on a shit ton of oil. I don't know if it's a liberal plan to wait for all of these other oil competitors to run through their oil, and then Canada will have the largest oil reserve in the world. I don't really know. But right now, It's silly and it's nonsense. Next up, we're going to take a look here at just general news here in Ontario. Well, not here in Ontario, but in Ontario. So Ontario communities are slammed by snow over the weekend. I want to show this and then comment about the snow afterwards. Here we go.
Parts of central Ontario are still digging out this morning from a weekend wallop of snow. Part of a highway is still closed.
This is the most snow I've seen in the 27 years that I've lived here in such a short period of time.
Hundreds of travelers were trapped on Highway 11 for hours, many without food or water. Gravenhurst was hit with 140 centimeters of snow. It's now under a state of emergency. Bracebridge saw 125 centimeters. Over 25,000 hydro customers are still without power, and Environment Canada warns some areas could get more than 30 centimeters of snow by tomorrow. With me now is Rick Maloney. He's the mayor of Bracebridge. Mayor, good morning. Thanks so much for being with us. So Bracebridge declared a significant weather event.
Okay. This is this is interesting. So I used to live on Vancouver Island where they don't get a lot of snow. And now I live in northern BC. And the plan for myself and my family is to rely less on the government and, you know, the federal government, the provincial, the municipal government, and be more self-reliant. So got myself a pickup truck. I got good tires. I'm about to have 2 proper sets of tires, and we get a lot of snow here. This amount of snow we've already had for weeks. I go outside. There's a snow bank that I've made my driveway that's like 5 feet tall. My 2-year-old daughter loves it. It's phenomenal. Now, a way to help combat where I live is to have the proper gear, to have the proper, not only clothes, but appliances or toys, I suppose, or utilitarian things. It's like a snowblower. I never thought in a million years that I'd need a snowblower, right? Just based off of how I've lived my life. I've never thought, but I'm doing it. And I think next we're going to be getting into homesteading. So we're going to move and get a little parcel of land, and we're going to do that stuff, right? And my wife right now is currently into sourdough bread. She's baking lots of sourdough bread. I mean, for crying out loud, she just right now brought me some food. Look at this. Look what I got here. I got this homemade meal. That bread right there, sourdough. Everything I eat is sourdough bread. It's phenomenal. I love it. She got into canning. So we're starting to get away from that stuff that when I was a kid growing up, that person, that family member or family friend that lived on like a big piece of land, right? That didn't want nothing to do with the government, had a long driveway, had a big tractor, all that stuff. That was like the crazy person, right? Didn't really have a lot of technology, liked letter mail instead of emails. And I thought, man, that's crazy. That person's crazy. I think I'm heading down that path. I think I'm heading down that path and be just a little cuckoo in the sense of wanting to just move away from city stuff and have a well, the Orwellian well or whatever it's called that goes 300 feet down, like that stuff. That's what my family and I are doing. So when I see stories like this about a town that's like freaking out over snow, I get it. If you live like that, a lot of these people don't necessarily have, you know, snow blowers and stuff like that. I get it. But man, dude, when you start to like gather things in your life that are made to kind of live off the beaten path, you can't go back. You can't go back to being in the system. And I'm just like touching the surface, right? Here I am with a pickup truck thinking, hey, I got it all figured out. Oh, there's a whole even further rabbit hole than what I've currently done, but I'm pretty excited. So I didn't actually want to take a look at the snow. I just kind of wanted to take a look at the fact that, hey, I've been there. I've lived in like the cul-de-sacs, right? I've lived that life where you just kind of rely on the government to come plow and all that stuff. And I don't want that. I want to live just me and my family doing our thing, away from people, away from society, and living happily. Homeschool our kids. So I thought I'd share that with you guys. Let me know down in the comments if that's even relatable to anyone, if I just sound a little bit cuckoo. Next up, we're going to take a look at a actual news story that's not about, hey, breaking news, there's snow. This is, hey, breaking news, there's snow and someone is stealing your tires off your car in your driveway. Yep. Welcome to Canada. This is in Edmonton. Let's take a look.
A
A brazen tire heist in West Edmonton. This security camera video from Wednesday morning shows a person using a pickup truck to pull the tires off Shannon Malot's vehicle.
Honestly, I was completely shocked by what I saw.
In the video, you can see the person loading tires into the box of their truck. Then they reverse and pull another tire free. The truck drives off, leaving the vehicle without a single wheel.
It slid my whole car right over.
It was an unfortunate discovery for Malot. She woke up Wednesday morning to a phone notification saying her tire pressure was low. When she went to check it out, what she found was much more serious than an air leak.
My back end was halfway into the street, and I thought someone had hit my car at first, and then I got closer and realized my car's on the ground. It had no tires, no rims, and it was just sitting on its rotors.
Malot had to buy 4 spare tires just to get her vehicle into a shop.
2 tow trucks in a row come the next day saying, I can't take your car. It's on the ground. I need wheels.
Malot says she's contacted her insurance company and reported the theft to police. Edmonton police were not able to comment on the incident Sunday. Malot is still waiting to find out the full extent of the damage and what it will cost.
That's going to cost me out of pocket for sure. It's not all covered by insurance.
Eric Bay, Global News.
A low tire pressure notification led to low tires gone. Like, that's nuts. I'm not laughing at that situation. I'm just kind of chuckling a little bit at the fact that this is Canada. And yes, this is extremely unfortunate and devastating for that person and that community to have to experience that. But man, the issue isn't just that, hey, look at this one rare instance where someone's tires were literally stolen off of their car in the driveway in in the first massive snowfall, which is extremely inconvenient and hard to pull that off. Like, having big gloves and all that gear is pretty difficult. But what the hell is going on in Canada? What the actual hell is going on in Canada? This is why I want to move away from everybody with my family. Like, that is craziness. Are you kidding me? Your car, the tires get stolen off your car? Like, is there even a policy for that in insurance? Do they even have that somewhere in the fine print? Or are they just gonna be like, well, that sucks. That sucks. Anyways, the deductible is gonna be $2,500, and you're like, the tires cost $1,700. That doesn't make any sense. I don't understand. I don't recognize this country. I don't like it. I don't approve. I don't consent. Now we got to take a look at, speaking of not consenting, you know that whole Canada Post strike that's happening? Okay, so Canada Post has not really been in agreement with how much money they're getting. They're government subsidized, and they're running a billion dollar deficit year over year, and it's not good. Now, is that the employees' fault? No, of course not. A lot of that is management and just incompetence. But now Canada Post, because the employees have been on strike, Canada Post is saying, let's start firing some of the people that are on strike, which is kind of illegal to do, especially since they're unionized. And so now the union is stepping in going, this seems illegal. Let's do something about it. So let's take a look at that story.
At Vancouver's Union Gospel Mission, stacks of mail urgently need delivering. It's a critical time of the year for the organization, which feeds and houses some of Vancouver's most vulnerable.
A majority of our donations historically come during this time, from Thanksgiving to Christmas.
In Kelowna, the Salvation Army is facing the same problem, as are hospital foundations.
It's really not optimal timing. We see definitely the highest volume of giving this time of year. We really count on this time of year for our support. We have grown to kind of expect it, and people are feeling very generous, which we're very grateful for.
The Native Women's Shelter of Montreal is also feeling squeezed financially.
We get the big bulk of it during Christmas, so we're starting to panic a little bit.
Canada Post trucks remain parked, and more than 55,000 employees off the job, with talks suspended.
I think they should put pressure on the government. I don't know that it's in the working class's favor to pass the legislation.
Labour Minister Stephen McKinnon's most recent comment was Thursday on X, where he stated in part, parties need to get down to work and solve the issues now. Charities say they're desperately trying to find solutions.
Earlier this year, we actually implemented some text messaging as well as straight to voicemail messaging and fundraising, and that's been really amazing now looking back.
But with a resolution nowhere in sight, the impacts of this dispute will continue to mount, exacerbated during this season of giving. Catherine Urquhart, Global News, Vancouver.
Yeah, not good. I mean, this is causing a massive issue here in Canada. Canada Post is, I mean, even though they've been running a, billion-dollar deficit year over year, they are still heavily relied on, right? A lot of people sending out letter mail and stuff like that are relying on Canada Post, myself included. All of these stickers here get sent out with Canada Post. And so to anybody who's ordered stickers, by the way, link is in the description. If you use code Sunshine on the sticker packs, you'll get yourself 15% off. But they can't be sent out right now because there's a standstill. So to a lot of people that have been saying, hey, where's my stickers? I'm sorry, but they've already been sent and they're just being held at Canada Post. So let's criticize Canada Post. But I actually am very sorry to all those who are, it's just kind of in limbo. It's very unfortunate, especially going into the holiday season. Now let's take a look here at this kind of new proposal, a new framework that the union is proposing for Canada Post.
To comment is Jim Gallant. He's a negotiator with the Canadian Union of Postal Workers. Hello to you, Jim. Glad you could be with us. Let's get straight to it. What's your reaction to the plan? Is it enough to bring you back to the bargaining table?
Well, first off, the special mediator kind of has that call. So far, we haven't been called back to the table. We were provided with what the corporation put forward as a framework to a negotiated settlement. But what we really want is a negotiated settlement. The time for frameworks is a bit gone. We need an offer that gets us there.
So this is not an offer. Let's just be clear about that with our viewers.
The word framework keeps being talked about, so it's an offer of an offer, I guess, not the real thing.
But have you liked what you've seen from this framework? Is it going in the right direction?
Well, it's in places it's going in the right direction, and in other places there's no movement. So we see some movement on pension problems that we had with previous offers, and we see that there's still problems, that there's no fixes for our health and safety demands, and no fixes for some of the other things that we have, like benefits.
What do you like about this framework?
Like I say, the move on pensions, there's a move on the defined benefit pension plan would be the highlight of what the framework is. But there's no movement on things like, there's millions of temporary hours being worked across the country. Canada Post is still entrenched on a part-time framework, and we can't have that.
So Canada Post made this announcement just a short time ago. What is next? What's the next step?
Well, that's part of the problem. Instead of dealing with the union, Canada Post puts out a media release when we don't want to be in the media necessarily on these things right away. Instead of giving us time to talk with our members, Canada Post puts out this, and obviously CTV is calling us for our opinion after that comes out.
Jim, final question. As we've been running a lot of stories about people who are really being hurt by this strike, what's your message to Canadians at this time of year who are depending on Canada's postal service?
I feel for every one of them, and the 55,000 of us that are out of work right now on strike, we feel the same pain that they do, and maybe even a little bit more. None of us are getting paid. 55,000 of us, so we feel right along with all those people and businesses.
All right, Jim Gallant is a negotiator with the Canadian Union of Postal Workers. Jim, thank you so much for being with us.
I don't actually know if they're going to be able to find some form of a resolution with this. I mean, it's just been going on for so long, and this isn't the first strike that Canada Post has endured. This has been something that they've done almost every single year for quite some time now. But I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments about that. Now we're going to shift away a little bit from Canada Post, and we're going to take a look at the U.S. tariffs. Okay. The U.S. tariffs and what Alberta Premier Smith has to say about this. So she actually sat down for a one-on-one with Global News and discussed it. So let's take a look at what she has to say. Because when it comes to the threats by Donald Trump on Canada, really the ones to take immediate action have been the Conservatives, but also premiers. Premiers have taken it upon themselves to really be proactive about this. And Alberta Premier Danielle Smith has come out and said that she's going to be working with the state of Montana, because they share the same border, on making sure that and anything in and out of either border is there is good and it's clean. So that's phenomenal with how proactive she has been. But let's take a look at what she has to say about Justin Trudeau. Here we go.
It was a stunning move by the incoming U.S. president. Shape up or ship out. Trump vowed that on his first day in office, he'll impose a 25% tariff on anything Canada or Mexico exports to America if their border security doesn't improve. The slap would hit all the provinces hard, and consumers on both sides of the border even harder.
It's like a family member stabbing you right in the heart. What I found unfair about the comments is to compare us to Mexico. And I can tell you, Canada is no Mexico. We do approximately, just Ontario alone, $500 billion of two-way trade. I found his comments unfair. I found them insulting.
Ontario is Canada's biggest exporter, but Alberta has a unique relationship with America. A staggering 90% of Alberta's exports head south of the border, including 3.3 million barrels of crude oil every day. If you include all of this province's exports to the U.S. last year, from food and agriculture to oil and gas, that totaled more than $156 billion. This isn't the first time that Trump has thrown Canada for a loop with over-the-top tariffs. In 2018, Trump's government imposed 25% on Canadian steel. Ottawa turned around and responded in kind with 25% tariffs on American steel. What the federal government will do this time is still unknown, but Alberta's premier is vowing to fight. We sat down with Alberta Premier Danielle Smith earlier this week. Premier, thank you so much for making time for us. I know it's incredibly busy here in the legislature right now as you figure out how to handle these tariffs.
Yeah, well, thanks for being here, and thanks for your interest, because 25% tariffs across the board with no exemptions, that's going to hurt every Canadian province. And so I think it's why you've seen that the premiers have taken such a vocal position on it so soon.
Well, what did you think when you heard this 25%? I mean, especially for oil and gas, I'd imagine that could be devastating to the Alberta economy.
Well, it's much higher than I expected him to lead with. I thought we were talking about a 10% tariff, which was going to be bad enough. I had hoped that we'd be able to make the case as well that energy should be exempted, because of course the Americans benefit from having 4 million barrels a day, most of that coming from Alberta, able to feed their needs. It brings down the cost of gasoline and diesel, which the Americans have said that they want to do. But I think we've got to take the new administration at its word, that there are some pressure points that they want us to resolve before we can even get to those discussions. They clearly do not like to see either Canada or Mexico use as a backdoor for China to be able to have goods come into the American market tariff-free and hollow out their manufacturing sector. They clearly are irritated that we've not met our 2% NATO commitment, and most recently they're irritated about the porous border for drugs, for people. And if we're going to have constructive conversations about trade, we've got to address those issues.
When you said initially responding to this that there was valid concerns, that was a different tone than, say, Doug Ford, who said it's like being stabbed in the back by a family member. I take it valid concerns doesn't necessarily mean you think that the 25% tariff is justified, though.
No, well, look, I mean, we have been raising the concern about the unsustainable levels of newcomers coming to Canada for some time. We had started off because we'd had declining population saying, oh, great, let's have more people come to Alberta. But we have had 450,000 people come to Alberta in the last 3 years. And a lot of that is because the federal government has really taken off all of the restrictions on newcomers coming into Canada. It's stressing all of our services. And now we're seeing that some people are using Canada as a staging area to sneak into the United States. The Americans have identified that. That's a problem. It's a problem for Canadians, and it's a problem for Americans. We've also been fighting this fentanyl crisis for many years. We have devoted resources to creating specialized teams to address it, specialized approach to drug addiction to be able to treat those and get them off the streets. So we share a common interest, I think, in addressing the issues of border security and addressing the issues of organized crime and the fentanyl crisis. So let's work on addressing those issues together, and then we can get to the discussion about trade.
Under the first Trump administration, the approach was very much this Team Canada approach that the Conservatives and the Liberals federally kind of came together, so did the premiers. Is that the same approach you're going to use, or kind of reading between the lines on some of what you've been saying, the fact that Alberta has their own envoy in DC now, are you going to be trying to talk to the Trump administration directly yourself?
We've had our own representation in Washington since 2005, and increasingly we've seen that we're the best proponents of our own interests, and we will continue to establish those relationships. I'd very much like to take a Team Canada approach, but I can tell you that Justin Trudeau hasn't made it easy. He hasn't made it easy with the revolving door of crime that we have because of some of the changes that he has made to criminal law. It's not easy because he hasn't been listening to the concerns that provinces have been raising about the uncontrolled number of newcomers coming into Canada. It's a concern for us particularly because he's hit us with carbon taxes, he's hit us with methane caps and oil emissions caps, which we know would reduce production. If we're going to lead with saying to the Americans, we are your solution to energy security, we are your solution to energy affordability, you can't take that message to the table when you've got these additional taxes and production caps layered on top. So we have to have a cohesive message. Part of this is going to be a bit of a climb down for Justin Trudeau on some of the bad policies that he's enacted over the last number of years. He has to recognize some of the things that he has done has not worked, and now it's interfering with our trade relationship with the United States, and that should be everybody's concern.
Donald Trump has talked about wanting to bring back Keystone XL. Does that give you any hope that maybe oil and gas has a better chance than some other Canadian industries of being exempted from those tariffs?
Well, I think there's a good argument to exempt oil and gas. I think when you look at one of the issues the Americans have in keeping their...
I mean, we're a massive exporter for oil and gas to them. So, I mean, like, it's such a weird move. People were expecting this, and it's not really that big of a surprise that Trump did this, but it's still such a bizarre move because, I mean, come on, man. They heard it's not only Canadians, but also Americans, right?
Strategic reserve field. Part of that is a sweet oil, and part of it is our heavier crude. When you look at their refineries in the Gulf Coast, they have been retooled to accept our heavy oil. Their alternatives are Iran or Venezuela, which I don't think is in the Americans' interest. And we know that by being able to provide that supply of product, it'll achieve one of the big goals that the new administration has of keeping prices down for their consumers. So we think we've got a good argument to make. But I must stress that I don't think we can go to the table with a yeah, but you need our oil so we don't have to take care of these other things that you're concerned about. I think it's a yes and. Yes, we can take care of these things and we can continue to have a great trade relationship, but we have to take seriously the issues that the administration is saying. I think that it's encouraging that he's given us 2 months notice. I think that's an indication
that's enough time.
He wants us to solve these problems because he could have not telegraphed that at all, and then we would have been hit with it on January 20th. And so now we've got 2 months to be able to come together as provinces and with the federal government to address these concerns in a meaningful way. And I think if we do, then we'll make some great progress. But the clock is ticking.
What are you going to ask the federal government for?
Well, a few things. I'm going to ask them what they intend to do to make sure that we're addressing the border issues. Does that mean that we have dedicated border security? Does that mean that we have more 24-hour border crossings? Does it mean that we start using drones to be able to monitor our extensive border border, what are they going to do about the issue of fentanyl and drug dealing? Are they going to repeal some of the policies that they have in the past that have allowed the worst criminals to be going in and out of jail and continuing to wreak havoc on our streets? And are they going to rescind the anti-energy policies that if they want to lead with talking about how important energy is, then they have to demonstrate it to the province that is principally producing that product for export. And that means get rid of the emissions cap, rescind the carbon tax. Let's talk with the Americans in terms that they will understand based on the new objectives of the new administration.
I don't think it'll surprise you if I tell you your critics will say, well, if you start splintering off like that and demanding the federal government change things for Alberta, or you negotiate with the Trump administration directly, it opens the door for them to find a split. Do you worry about that at all?
Well, look, I mean, my first meeting is going to be tomorrow with Justin Trudeau and my premierial counterparts.
Whoa.
I'm going to the Western Governors Conference at the beginning of December, so I will be meeting with some allies of the Trump administration and Republicans while I'm down there. I will be going again to the coffee table in mid-December. Also, I'll be going to the inauguration, so I've got lots of opportunities to be able to talk.
That's sweet.
With my Canadian counterparts, but also with our American counterparts. And I think it's got to be an all-hands-on-deck approach. I must tell you, I don't think it's any secret that the personal relationship between the leaders of our two countries is strained. I think he should be leveraging the relationships that we have to be able to make the case with the governors and the business leaders in the United States so that they can make our case for us. This is a mutual trade relationship. One of the things that when I met with, I had an event I went to where I sat next to Robert Lighthizer, who had been the previous trade negotiator. And one of the things that he said, and he gave me his book, which was nice to have, is that the Americans want fair trade. They want a nation to buy as much stuff from them as they buy from that nation. And we have about as balanced trade as you can possibly get. And so that's why I'm saying that those arguments are not going to be sufficient. Yes, we can make them, but we have to take the administration seriously when it says those other irritants are a non-starter. If we don't address those, we're not even going to get to the table. So yes, I'm going to talk to my counterparts across the country, but we are also going to make the case with our American counterparts that Canada should get a carve-out for a lot of reasons.
Because for the Americans, this is about security, not trade. Canada always sees the relationship from an economic perspective. The Americans see it from a security perspective. What is the situation along the Alberta border?
Well, I can tell you that, I've written a joint letter with the Montana Governor Giannaforte to have a 24-hour border crossing at Wild Horse Crossing, and those are the kinds of things that we think we need, not only to improve trade, but if you've got a border that is being monitored 24 hours a day, that also helps to lend to security too. And it's
Wait, does Alberta not have a border that's monitored 24 hours a day? Like, I understand that a lot of the border issues in Canada are maybe lack of funding, but do we seriously have areas that are not monitored 24 hours a day? I thought you would think that it is. Maybe I'm just naive, but I have always thought that most of our border is monitored 24 hours a day. Maybe that's because I grew up in Ontario and they've got the big border crossings, right? But I always thought that it was. I understand Roxham Road. I thought maybe that was just like a little loophole. I didn't realize there's places in Alberta that are not monitored 24 hours a day. Yeah, no wonder we have a massive issue, right? No wonder.
Fallen on deaf ears so far, but those are the kind of things that I would like to see, because what I'm worried about is that we also have a very serious drug addiction problem and drug smuggling crisis in Alberta, and we want to be able to address those in collaboration with the federal government. We've got a lot of product coming in from British Columbia. Maybe one thing they could do is that they could monitor every single container that is coming into the port, as opposed to just 1% of them. If that's the nature of the problem, then why don't we demonstrate that we're doing things to address it? Because Canadians are being impacted by this. The Americans see they're being impacted as well, and I think we would benefit from jointly solving these problems.
We have to wrap. My final question to you would be, what's at stake for Alberta here?
Well, I think one of the things that we've recognized, I certainly recognized since coming into this position, is just how important our relationship is with the Americans. I think that holds true for every.
Yeah, pretty important.
They are our biggest trading partner by a country mile, $188 billion worth of cross-border trade. Our next closest is China at $10 billion. And I would say that it is probably a common story with every single province. And so we can't allow this relationship to be neglected, and we can't allow for these irritants to grow to a big point gap where it ends up impacting that incredibly fruitful and positive relationship that we have. So let's address those irritants, and then let's go back to having the kind of relationship we've always had with the Americans.
Premier Smith, thank you for taking the time to speak to us today.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be a province's premier's job to basically try and solve a border issue, right? Even within her own border, even within Alberta's border, it doesn't really make much sense well, now it does because the federal government has dropped the ball so much, but that's supposed to be the federal government's job. So that's really not a good reflection of our Liberal government and of Justin Trudeau. But I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments about that. Do you think this is good that Danielle Smith is being this proactive about the border issue? Or do you think this is bad? Let me know your guys' reasoning down below. Next up, we're going to take a look here at what's going on in the House. So I've seen in the comments, when's the vote? When's the vote? When's it happening? All right. So since question period ended, okay, since question period ended, I showed you on my phone, there's an itinerary. There was like 4 or 5 things done that take a few minutes. Then Conservative MP Cooper was supposed to do a 10-minute speech on the SDTC scandal. And then they were supposed to table the motion for the vote of non-confidence. And so you've got all of this, like it was predetermined that it was going to happen today. So this is what's going on right now in the House, right? I've got it muted because it's Quebec. It's Quebec that's talking. Since QP ended, they have been filibustering. How long have we been streaming since QP ended? An hour? 45 minutes? An hour and a half? I don't even know at this point. An hour and a half, maybe? They've been filibustering for an hour and a half. You want to hear what he's talking about? Here you go.
To build a society where every identity is respected and valued. And this leads us to reflect on our own identity, Madam Speaker. In Quebec, we have a long history of fighting to preserve our language, our culture, and our rights.
That's what they're talking about. They've been filibustering for an hour and a half when they should have been tabling the motion. And so within the past 30 seconds, I just got a text message saying that, nope, they're not doing it. They can't table the motion because they've been filibustering. Look, it was in the schedule. It was part of the itinerary that they were going to table it today. The Conservatives had that idea. Then the Liberals and it wasn't the Bloc that did it. It was the Liberals and the NEP that were filibustering. They took up all of the time. They can't just table something whenever and however you want. It has to be within a certain time slot. And they freaking filibustered for an hour, bro. An hour. Kevin Lemereau, or whoever his rat face is, he's the one who did most of the filibustering. It's insane. We don't know why. We don't know why. They didn't want it done today. Conservatives pulled out. We don't know what the hell's going on. All right. So I'm sorry if anyone feels misled. I've been streaming for 3 hours because I've been waiting for this. Okay. So we're all disappointed equally. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that we didn't get to see them table the vote of non-confidence today, or at least vote on it. All right. We're going to have to wait and see how tomorrow plays out, or even later today. But it seems like this is not happening right now because they've already gone past their time slot. So unless there's some crazy emergency measures, this is what you're going to have to listen to in Poilievre.
We have a responsibility to build an identity that reflects.
And I'm not going to put words in your mouth.
Collective aspiration.
I'm not going to put words in your mouth.
But
I don't think you want to listen to this crap. And I can guarantee you, I don't want to listen to this crap either. So I'm sorry for the disappointment. I'm sorry. But I've been waiting. I had this pulled up on another monitor. I got a guy also watching it who's been texting me for any updates as we've been going on since question period ended. And we're all disappointed. People are saying it's not my fault. Yeah, I mean, Thanks. I know it's not my fault. I didn't say, hey, House Speaker, don't let them table the motion. I've been waiting just like everybody else has been waiting. So I'm sorry for the disappointment. I guess we're going to end it now. We're going to end it here because there's nothing else to watch. They're just talking about stupid shit now. They're talking about stupidity. And so there's nothing else to watch. Sorry, folks, but we'll see you guys tomorrow. Tomorrow's a new day. Maybe something happens tonight. Does this still count as opposition day? Says the cryptic sench with a $6.99. I don't think so. I don't think so because they didn't do nothing. So no, I don't think today was an actual opposition day. I could be mistaken. In a few seconds, I'm going to get a text message with an update, I think, from somebody who's watching. But I don't think it was, but I'll let you know in a second here. I see the chat message going on. Yes, this is still an opposition day. There you go. There's your answer. Son of a bitch. So they blocked the opposition day where they're supposed to table the vote of non-confidence because they filibustered. That's Canadian politics. Horseshit. He lost one of his 3 opposition days by doing this. There you go. We have answers. Pierre Poilievre lost an opposition day because the Liberals and the NDP filibustered for over an hour instead of allowing them to table the motion of vote of non-confidence. How does that feel? Does that piss you off? It should. Do you feel angry? You probably deserve the right to feel angry. So what are we going to do about it? Well, we could talk about it. We could try and educate people on this crap. That's pretty much all we could do. We could vote. That's it. That's all we're going to do. That's all we're going to advocate for doing. This is super annoying. This is super, super annoying. A full opposition day. Gone. I'm glad I got corrected. Thanks. Thanks for that correction. And thanks for asking the question. So now we know. That's so stupid. That's so stupid. Next row with the 99 cents with a poop emoji. Nah, pretty much. The cryptic sense with the 2 members. When's the vote happening, Jasper? That's from earlier. Yeah, man, sorry. Yeah. Fucking filibuster, dude. So they can just filibuster for the rest of the day. Yep. Yeah, they can. Pierre's done it. Pierre Poilievre has filibustered. I think he did for like 8 hours one time. It was nuts. Absolutely nuts. There was one liberal dude standing on his side of the bench, and then you had a whole whack of conservatives that sat there with Pierre for like 8 hours or 5 hours or something crazy, and Pierre filibustered. But now we just got filibustered, and we lost a full opposition day. So, in theory, they can do this. That's allowed. You're allowed to do this. This is what sucks. This is the shitty part about politics. But you're allowed. And if the shoe is on the other foot, if the foot was on the other shoe, would we want Pierre to filibuster some coup happening? Yeah, of course. Get rid of them, right? Get out of here, filibuster. But it happened to us. So, yeah, it sucks. It sucks a lot. Yeah, he filibustered for 4 hours a few months ago. That was pretty awesome. That was pretty awesome. Sorry about that, guys. I've been waiting just like everyone else. Next we're out with the 2-month membership. Thanks for joining, man. Or I guess thanks for hitting 2 months. I think that's what that means. Balls in a Vice with a 10 from Nexera. Oh, that was from the Chihuahua. Did we filibustered? Right, that's Francois Champagne. We filibustered. It was successful. We filibustered. For crying out loud, man. Nexera with the 10 saying Tug Meat loves to tug on meat and gargle Vienna sausage. Dude, you're going to get me in trouble. Woody Doppelganger with a 2. Crying Wolf, are we? What a childish rant. That was from Champagne. Francois Champagne. Jordan English with the 5. You can always tell when someone is losing an argument and they get really loud. You can take from that what you will. Yeah. That's exactly right. Okay, so I got an update here. So here's what needs to happen for the motion to be presented either tomorrow or Wednesday. Poilievre needs to agree to put an end to the debate on the SDTC and allow the confidence motion to go through. I'm reading from my phone. But that would also mean letting the Liberals off the hook. Pierre must know something we don't. So he didn't let the Liberals off the hook. He still technically has that freeze in there, right? Because he didn't let go of the SDTC stuff. So he has to let go of the SDTC scandal and then put forward the vote of non-confidence. He can't have both, apparently. Okay, so it's one or the other, and he didn't put forward the vote yet. He didn't do it. They didn't do it. They got filibustered against him, right? So it's like a game of chess right now. And to be honest, if I had to pick who is the better chess player, I'm going with Pierre, hands down. You got it, man. You got it. He knows what he's doing. Connie Smile with the 2 saying, I rather trust the mob than the government. CC Ramsey with the 279, can't listen to Trudeau gasping for every word. Andrew LePence with the 2, can't care about a future you can't afford to live in. Yeah. CC Ramsey with the 699, do the Liberals hire based on annoying voices, twitches, or gasps? Do Liberals hire based on annoying twitches or gasps? Yeah, I'm not really sure. The criteria is it's kind of weird, man. Kind of weird to be a Liberal. It's going to take them a lot of time to fix their reputation. Michelle Matty with the 2, hire Canadians, make food affordable, and stop fucking us all. Yep. You didn't have to pay 2 to say that. You could have said that for free. Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Andrew LePence with the 5. 2021 plus 2022 plus 2023 equals 6,066. 3 years of World War III, then 2024. The 33rd year of MK Ultra. www.com33. The light in the middle of the House of Commons. 3 out of 3. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting perspective. I'll leave it at that. That's a lot of stuff put together that makes sense probably to very few people. I don't think I understand any of that, but Andrew LePence again with a 2 saying internet is literally MK Ultra. 1991 to 2024 equals 33. All right. So let's see the latest ones here. Connie Smile with a 2. It's a dirty game. They are playing with us. Yes, it is. It is absolutely. That's politics. That is politics. That's literally what politics is. It's we're seeing politics happen, and I hate it. I hate it when we're on the receiving end of shit rolling downhill. But Pierre doesn't seem worried. He doesn't seem worried. He knows something that we don't know. So again, if we're gonna trust Pierre, we gotta fully trust Pierre, right? Woody Doppelganger with a 5 saying, wow, kind of sad that they are that terrified they filibuster it with a vote of non-confidence. Yeah, I mean, are there enough Liberal MPs to vote in favor of it, to usurp the Liberals, to do the coup? Possibly, man. Possibly. You only need 14 extra on top of the Conservatives and on top of the Bloc. So that's crazy. Crazier things may have happened. We might be seeing history unravel itself in real time. I'm pretty optimistic. And next row with the 10 saying Jasper, Ryan and Tanya have a video on everything that went on today. I don't know who that is, but thanks for that. Okay, folks, we're going to end it here. Thanks so much for watching. We're going to see you guys at the same time tomorrow for another live stream. Hopefully tomorrow is a bit more optimistic, or it has a better ending than what today did, because this filibuster super duper sucks, man. Thanks for watching. Peace and love, everybody. Thanks for super chats. Thanks for love. Thanks for the memberships. And I'll see you guys same time tomorrow. Bye for now.